Kenzie, you're still on, so if you can just make sure to mute it and then keep trying to get off if you can. And Willow, it does show your recording is being paused. Are we ready to go? All right. Well, welcome everyone to the 2020 Candidates Forum. Thank you for joining us this evening. Local and state elections are a part of the fabric of our great country, and we appreciate your participation. My name is Clark Lovelace. I'm Executive Director of the Brevard, Transylvania Chamber of Commerce. Yes, Willow. Willow, were you drawing my attention?
Yes, one moment, please. I haven't started the recording, so if you can just let me confirm that Facebook is going, which I have not done yet.
Sure.
Hang
It
tight.
does say live.
Please.
It does say live on Facebook at the top.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Clark, we are now recording. Please continue.
Sure.
Please start over.
All right. We'll welcome everyone again to the 2020 Candidates Forum. Thank you for joining us this evening. Local and state elections are a part of the fabric of our great country, and we appreciate your participation. My name is Clark Lovelace. I'm the Executive Director of the Brevard, Transylvania Chamber of Commerce. We're the organization who coordinates this event as part of our role to connect the business community, local government, and the general public in Transylvania County. We would like to thank the Transylvania County government for allowing use of their chambers as well as their audiovisual support, WSQL Radio for live radio coverage of the event, Comporium for recorded video coverage, as well as the Transylvania Times for both pre and post-event newspaper coverage. I'd like to thank Graham Fields, who's serving as moderator this evening. He has a great background in the political realm and deals with community and state issues in his current role at Advent Health. I've seen him in action in a similar capacity with numerous events, including legislative forums with the Henderson and Transylvania County Chambers, as well as recently the Henderson County School Board Forum. On those occasions, and over the past month, he has proven to be a knowledgeable, fair, smart, unbiased, and effective individual. I am grateful for his participation. Thank you, Graham. I'd also like to thank Willow Walker, the Chamber's Member Services Coordinator. She has worked diligently to make this event happen in what is undoubtedly the most unique and challenging circumstances we have ever seen for a candidates forum. Thank you very much, Willow. Enjoy your well-deserved day off tomorrow. I invite you to visit the chamber, the brevardnchamber.org for a list of all of tonight's candidates and other information about the event. Again, that is brevardnchamber.org. And finally, the purpose of tonight's event is for citizens to learn about candidates for key local and state elections so they can make educated decisions when voting. We all have important roles this evening. Ours as host is to be fair and unbiased in providing an informative event in a reasonable amount of time. We commit to doing that. For the candidates, it is to provide honest answers to the questions, to follow the rules that we've shared with you, and to be respectful of the moderator and the other candidates. And for the audience, it is to listen. It is to behave appropriately, which in this case, I guess means comments on our live stream, and to vote. Please vote. With that, I will turn it over to our moderator, Graham Fields, who will review the rules of the forum and get us started. Thank you, Graham.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Clark, for that kind introduction. As Clark mentioned, my name is Graham Fields, and I'm blessed to be part of the administrative team at Advent Health. It's an honor to be with you this evening and to have the opportunity to moderate. I want to thank everybody who's joining us today, radio and via social media. Thank you so much and welcome. I want to thank the candidates. I want to thank all of you for your time and your willingness in sort of this unprecedented situation to join us virtually today. I also want to thank the Chamber for hosting and all of their effort to put this together, the planning and preparation. This evening's forum will consist of candidate panels for the following offices. First up, we have Transylvania County Board of Commissioners, the Transylvania County Board of Education, the Transylvania County Board of Commissioners, the unexpired term. So we'll separate those two panels. And then we'll have our state offices with our Senate District 48 and our House District 113. You can find a document listing all of the candidates online at the brevardnchamber.org. And now I want to draw your attention to this evening's procedure for each panel. We'll begin each one with me reading the biographies. So we'll have an introduction for each of you that our audience will hear. Each candidate will be asked to provide a 1-minute opening statement. That statement will be on a suggested topic, as you've heard. And then we will begin asking those pre-selected questions. Please note that we are not able to accept additional questions from the public via Facebook, and that there will be a maximum of 1 minute designated for each response to the questions asked. Clark mentioned it earlier, but the faster you can put your opinions and thoughts forward in response to the questions, the more questions we can get to. It was noted earlier, but please watch Willow. You'll see her in the corner. She will have a yellow card to indicate that you have 15 seconds left, and then a red card when your time is up. When we flash the red card, finish up your statement, your sentence. But if you don't, unfortunately, we'll have to mute you and make every attempt to continue. Candidates, please indicate that you can see the time card now by raising your hand. She's going to show you the time card. Let's make sure everybody can see it. Great. Looks like we are all set. And if for some reason you lose the time card, you can't see it, you can always change your view. Chamber staff and I will also use the chat function. So please watch that just in case it's an opportunity to communicate or if you have a question. We're going to rotate the candidates in the order that you'll get questions so that each of you will have a turn to go first and respond. Remember, each candidate will have a chance to respond to each and every question. We have selected the order randomly prior to the event. And please remember, after I ask the question, I'll identify who it's addressed to first, and each candidate will have 1 minute to summarize their answer. As a reminder, these questions were compiled by the Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee with my participation as moderator. They were based on submissions from the general public. We made every attempt for these questions to be unbiased that would result in informative responses. These questions haven't been shared with anyone. We thank the public for viewing our virtual forum and feel like we're ready to get started. As referenced, each candidate will be asked to share an opening statement on a specific topics right after I share your background on your behalf. We hope that that will allow the audience to learn more about the issues and you, and we will get started here. So what we'll do is I'm going to begin by reading the bio information for each one of you, the candidates for county commissioner, and then we will get started with the first question. Our first candidate for the Transylvania County Board of Commissioners is candidate Carl Conley Jr. Candidate Carl Conley Jr. graduated from Brevard High School, then joined the United States Marine Corps as an infantryman. After an honorable discharge, he attended Blue Ridge Community College, where he served as the chapter president of Phi Beta Lambda and was involved in student government. He was also elected Western Region Vice President of the North Carolina chapter of Phi Beta Lambda. He is currently employed with the Flint Group. Mr. Conley has served as a football official with WNCSO for 13 years and a basketball official for 10 years. Carl and his wife, Christy, have 3 children, Tasha, Adaya, and Saria. Our next candidate is Larry Chapman. Candidate Larry Chapman graduated from Brevard High School, then received a Bachelor of Science degree from Western Carolina University. He also completed the U.S. Marine Corps Officer Candidate School and Amphibious Warfare School. In addition to his 30-year military career in the Marine Corps and Reserves, Mr. Chapman worked at Acoustic for 27 years and for the Delfort Group. He has served as Transylvania Commissioner for 8 years and as Chairman for 2 years. He also served on the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Board and currently serves on the board for the Military History Museum of the Carolinas. Larry is a member of the Brevard, Transylvania Chamber of Commerce, the Military Officers Association of America, the American Legion Post 88 in Brevard, and the Blue Ridge chapter of the Sons of American Revolution. He and his wife, Jill, have 3 grown children and 2 grandchildren. Our next candidate is Jason Chappell. Candidate Jason Chappell graduated from Rosamond High School and achieved a college degree from Appalachian State University. He also participated in the inaugural class of the Blue Ridge Community College Leadership Institute. He currently works as the director of the Henderson and Transylvania County NC Works Career Centers at Blue Ridge Community College. Mr. Chappell has received the Governor's Award for Excellence in Workforce Development and the Wayne Daves Award for Outstanding Achievement in Workforce Development. He is also a Global Career Development Facilitator. Jason has served as a Transylvania Commissioner for 4 terms and the Transylvania County Board of Education for 2 terms, as the chairman of the Land to Sky Regional Council and the Board of Deacons for Old Toxaway Baptist Church, for the Backpack Buddies Steering Committee, the School Construction Committee, and on numerous other committees. He and his wife, Tessa, have a daughter, Jessie, and son, Avery. Our next candidate is Mike Hawkins. Candidate Mike Hawkins graduated from Brevard High School, then went on to receive a Bachelor of Arts and Master's in Business Administration from UNC Chapel Hill. He is the president of Pisgah Enterprises. Mr. Hawkins has received the North Carolina Rural Advocate of the Year Award in 2019, the Shepherd Award for Western North Carolina's Most Outstanding Elected Official in 2018, and the Duke Power Citizenship in 2011. He currently serves as the chair of the Transylvania Board of Commissioners and on the executive boards of the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, the North Carolina Travel and Tourism, and the Land of Sky Regional Council. He is co-chair of the NC Small Business Policy Task Force Board and serves on the NC Task Force for Racial Equity and Criminal Justice and the Transylvania Tourism Development Authority. He has previously served on numerous other community boards. Mike and his wife Claudia have 1 daughter, Allison. Our next candidate is Paige Lamell. Candidate Paige Lamell graduated from Brevard High School and then went on to obtain a degree from Duke University. She owns and operates Keystone Camp. Ms. Lemel has received several awards for her work, including the NACO Achievement Award for Best Childhood Program in the Nation, the Duke Energy Citizen and Service Award, and the Charles Dukes Award for Outstanding Volunteer Service to Duke University. She has served as the Vice Chair of the Transylvania County Board of Commissioners, on the Board of Directors for the NC Association of County Commissioners, on the board of the Transylvania County Department of Social Services, Get Set Transylvania, as the chair of the Transylvania County Schools Educational Foundation, on the board of directors for VIA Health and SAFE, and several additional local, state, and national boards and groups. Ms. Lemel and her husband, Mark, have 3 children, Catherine, Hannah, and Sam. The next candidate is Teresa Mccall. Candidate Teresa Mccall graduated from Brevard High School and received a secondary degree from Blue Ridge Community College. Teresa retired as Chief of Administration after 37 years with the Blue Ridge Parkway, a unit of the National Park Service Southeast Region. She was frequently called upon to assist with implementation of new programs and initiatives, serving as Southeast Region instructor for the Financial Business Management System and Administrative Finance System. She also served as Equal Employment Opportunity Counselor early in her career. She received the Blue Ridge Parkway Employee of the Year Award in 2013 and Superior Performance Awards yearly from 1985 through 2018. Elected to the Transylvania Board of Education for 12 years, Ms. Mccall served as chair and vice chair the majority of that time. She is a founding member of Brevard Community Church and served as a Blue Ridge Community College trustee. Teresa and her husband Scott have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Our final candidate for the Transylvania County Board of Commissioners is candidate David Siniard. Candidate David Siniard graduated from Brevard High School and received a degree in physical education from Western Carolina University. He is retired from the Transylvania County school system, where he received the Most Memorable Teacher Award from Transylvania Scholars 11 times. He was also nominated as the Teacher of the Year at Strauss Elementary and Davidson River. Most of Mr. Siniard's involvement in the community was in working with students and their families through Transylvania County schools. David and his wife Debbie have a daughter Brooke and son Cody. Brooke and her husband, Casey Owen, have David and Debbie's first grandchild, Everly Boone. Cody and his wife, Jonlyn Linville, will be having their first child, Presley, in October. Well, thank you, everybody, for those introductions and sharing that. Our next step is to move to the questions. And so I want you please to pay attention to the order in which I ask. I'll always call on you first to begin, but if you will pay attention, you'll have some idea of basically the order that we're going in. And remember that we're beginning this with an introduction that is really also an opening statement on this specific topic. So we will begin with David Siniard. And remember that your question is, what are your priorities if elected? So go ahead and unmute yourself and we will get started. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Graham. The key phrase in priority here is needs outweighing wants. The 5 county commissioners must communicate as a group in weighing our needs over our wants. We as commissioners must prioritize the needs of agencies under our watch, the city, the school system, and the people in our lovely community. We have many needs ahead of us, and we need to communicate and finish what we either or other boards before us have started. We cannot be stagnant in our decisions. Any matters unattended and not completed are a detriment to our community. That is our biggest need, starting and finishing.
Thank you very much. Our next candidate, we will hear from Mr. Carl Conley Jr.
Thank you. My priorities, if elected, would be to continue the work that has been done to maintain our county's standing in the community, to be a diligent public servant to all citizens of Transylvania County. Lastly, to seek a means of boosting our county's economy, to provide a way for younger citizens to not be forced to move away from this area after they graduate from high school or college. I think that those things are very important and are mainly are my main goals if elected. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Teresa Mccall.
Thank you, Graham. I first would like to take just a second of my time and offer condolences to the Hendricks family in Henderson County who lost a loved one this morning in the line of duty. I'm going to focus on just one priority that I have, and that's an overriding priority that touches so many things, and that's the financial and business recovery for our county due to the COVID pandemic. I noticed just today that another business had closed, and every business that closes, every family that leaves this county has an impact not only on our tax base, but on the very fabric of our county. We don't yet know the true impact from the state related to loss of revenue, but we're hearing that it could be billions of dollars. Looking at shortfalls and how to address these needs and how to get our businesses open and operating is one of my priorities, is a major priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jason Chappell.
Thank you, and I agree with Teresa. Our hearts and prayers go out to the Hendricks family, that horrible situation this morning. My priorities for County Commissioner remain the same as they did the very first time I came before you. I promised that I would respect you, the taxpayer. I promised with every decision that comes before the County Commissioner Board, that would always be in the back of my mind, on my heart, is how that would affect each and every single taxpayer. I promised I would support our public education systems in Transylvania County. I promised that I would support workforce development and economic development initiatives in Transylvania County. I promised I would support law enforcement in Transylvania County. I promised I would fight for private property rights very strongly here in Transylvania County. I made those promises. I feel like I've accomplished those, and I promise those same things once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Mike Hawkins.
Well, thank you, Mr. Fields. It was interesting hearing the introductions, the bios of all the different candidates and the awards that we've all gotten. And I think it's interesting, and I think I speak for every candidate here, is that's not the reason we do this stuff. For me, the reason I do it is that I want Transylvania County to be a better place for the folks who are coming 20 years from now. And everything that I do as a commissioner is based on that premise. The county manager and I've said this before, the county manager and I have conversations almost every day. And a lot of times I'll ask her to tell me, what have we done today that people 20 years from now will be glad that we've done this today? So that's my priority. I would also want to say in 15 seconds that I'm looking forward to this forum. I'm looking forward to hearing what other candidates feel about the issues and learning from them, because again, it's not about what is your best, it's what's the best for everyone. I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Larry Chapman.
Thank you, and thank the Chamber for hosting this event and all the citizens that have tuned in. I have one key priority, and here it is. It's 6 words: make our county best in the state. The best to live in, where we have a safe and secure community, maintain our clean environment, and provide excellence in education. The best to work in, employment opportunities with reasonable pay for all those that want and seek a job. The best county to play in, excellent recreational facilities and programs for all ages. And the best place to retire, provide excellent services and support for all our senior citizens. My focus will be on these key issues, impacting all our citizens with the one goal to make our county best in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Paige Lamell.
Thank you, Graham. Appreciate everybody being here. I think it's important that we continue to build on our existing strengths in the county and continue to identify challenges and work for community-driven solutions to those. Specifically, as Teresa mentioned, addressing the impacts of COVID on the county, on our economy, and on our families. We need to develop a plan for infrastructure with the expansion of sewer, water, broadband, and our landfill. We need to continue to invest in economic development to support mentorship programs for our youth and support our growing innovative manufacturers such as Kier and Sylvan Sport. We need to continue to support recreational opportunities, both within our county and looking for opportunities to connect ourselves regionally. We need to make a courthouse decision, finally, for once, and move on. We need to continue strong funding for education, continue our work on early childhood, and to continue to build on developing strong public-private partnerships to support the quality of life that we're proud of in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody doing that. And we will begin the next question. We'll start with Carl Conley. And so this is question number 1, is about land use. And the question is, are you in favor of zoning for strategic land use? And if so, what is your top priority for new zoning in the county? We'll begin with Carl Conley.
Thank you. Zoning is a really tricky and touchy subject as far as land use goes. I think the important thing is to protect what's scenic and to conserve our natural resources and not make invasive zoning into those areas. Prioritizing zoning to aid with economic development is a major key there. But those two can go hand in hand without disturbing the natural beauty that we have here in our county. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Teresa Mccall.
I think this is a topic that comes up every 2 years. Let me first say, I am not in favor of just arbitrarily zoning for the sake of zoning. A good portion of our county is already tied up in federal and state lands, in homeowners associations, in conservation easements. So there's very little land actually to focus economic development on. So when you talk about zoning, I'm all for planning if we're planning for a specific purpose, but not just to arbitrarily create another set of rules and regulations for people to follow. I will always, always work to protect the property owner's rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jason Chappell.
Sorry. Yes, I'll say for this question, I've been on record, I am against countywide zoning. I probably said it probably more than any candidate up here combined. That's just a personal conviction of mine. I have always believed that. Now, I will say with that, there is certain circumstances where it may be necessary. And the reason I say that is if you extend water lines, if you extend sewer right in that corridor with, unless it's all of it goes down the highway, you will have to have something for a municipality to probably allow you to tap in. So these are very specific instances. I'm totally against countywide zoning. I will never be for countywide zoning, but I am for economic development.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Mike Hawkins.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. When I first came on the board, commissioners were totally opposed to any type of meaningful land use planning, whether it be zoning or ordinances or anything like that. Since that time, there's been a real shift in attitude. And I really think the biomass issue in Penrose several years back was kind of a tipping point in that it really showed commissioners the value of smart land use planning. The point being, the discussion now is not whether we should be looking at planning, it's how do we do it? What's the best approach? Cedar Mountain's going through a small area plan right now that commissioners authorized, not unanimously, but authorized in support with staff. So that's one approach. I will say that I'm real big on infrastructure improvements. Jason was just talking about that. Infrastructure corridors. You cannot extend infrastructure, utilities infrastructure without talking about land use planning with those affected areas, and I'm all for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Larry Chapman.
As was mentioned earlier, most of the county is already zoned, probably 65% of it. So I'm totally opposed to countywide zoning. However, like Mike just said, there should be some areas that we need to consider in our corridors and work where we can establish some industrial zones. I attended the small area planning meeting last night with Cedar Mountain, and it's allowing input from the citizens. And I think we need to listen to the citizens of those communities. And if there's a unanimous approval in those communities on things that they'd like to do, then we as commissioners should definitely work with those small area planning groups, but no countywide zoning. We already have enough of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Paige Lamell.
I agree with several things that have been said, specifically around controlling what's developed as we expand infrastructure in the county. That's essential. And I agree with Mike. I think biomass was absolutely a tipping point for this discussion. To me, the way I look at zoning maybe a little differently than others, because what we're talking about here is neighbors coming together. This is a community-driven solution. These are our citizens coming together around a challenge or a problem, and they are deciding together what they value in their resources, in their environment, in their neighborhoods, and they're deciding to protect that. And I think that's the wonderful piece of what we're doing with allowing small area planning in Cedar Mountain, potentially Lake Toxaway and Dunn's Rock. It's neighbors protecting what they value, and we should support that.
Thank you. Last, we'll hear from David Siniard.
You know, being the last one, you got to use, I agree with most everybody, what they're talking about, using just common sense. Again, all the candidates talked about our community. We have the DuPont State Forest, we have Gorgeous State Park, we have National Forest, we have state properties, we have flood zones. We've got to come up with common sense approach. And again, I agree with some of the candidates. It needs to be back to the communities. Let the communities come in, get together, talk, come up with plans where we as commissioners can also look at needs and move on with what we hear from our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. We will start our second question with Teresa Mccall. This question is about economic development. Several of you mentioned those in your opening statements. What would you do as a county commissioner to support economic development in Transylvania County? We'll begin with Teresa Mccall.
Well, obviously that's a tough question because that question is asked every 2 years and we get some of the same answers every 2 years. I think that Transylvania County is in a unique position. We have so much to offer businesses, and I think what we will be seeing over the next months and even the next 2 or 3 years, I believe we will see manufacturing jobs start returning to the United States that are located overseas. That is going to be an opportunity for us. I have experience working with state and federal officials through my National Park Service career. And, you know, so many things that are currently being done, and that is to continue working with those officials. And also, perhaps it's time to have a fresh look at economic development and some new ideas and a new voice at the table. It's not an easy task to tackle. If it was, we wouldn't be talking about it right now. But I think that we can make gains and have some successes.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jason Chappell.
What can we do to foster economic development? One of the bigger things that we can do is make sure that our regulations that are on the books are not excessive and punitive. That's one of the main reasons that drives away businesses if they are not able to do what they need to. Another example of something we can do that we can continue to do is the Acoustic Road project. That was a partnership where commissioners agreed we need to fund economic development. We need to build a building. We have to have product. That's an example. Another example of what we can continue to do is what I personally think is one of the best, most impactful things that we have done in county in decades, and that is extending those sewer lines in the upper end of the county from Guy to the town of Rosman, working in partnerships with those federal partners, working with the state partners, working with the town of Rosman, doing that, making those partners. If we continue to work with our partners, also finally we need to invest in our workforce. A well-trained, viable workforce is one of the key economic development tools, and that's something we have control over and that we can help.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Mike Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. You know, jobs come at the end of the process. In order to have meaningful economic development, you need certain building blocks to begin with. And I think there are 4 in particular. One is infrastructure, was just mentioned. You've got to have appropriate infrastructure, and that's not just water and sewer. That's also broadband, it's natural gas. It's all the things that go into attracting new businesses and helping existing businesses grow. You've got to have sites and locations where businesses can locate, which is a challenge here in Transylvania County. We've got to expand that. You've got to have housing, appropriate housing where workers can live. If new people are coming in, or if people who already live here need housing, you need an adequate supply of that. And you also need, as Jason mentioned, education, proper education. Now, all of those things cost money, and that's the reason Teresa talked about all the time. Just the infrastructure itself is going to cost, in my opinion, it's going to cost 4 cents on the tax rate. Are we willing to do that? And I hope we'll talk about infrastructure more in another question, but I'll say right now, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Larry Chapman.
The thing about economic development, we have to remember that the only jobs that government creates are government jobs. This has to be a public-private initiative, and we have a great one that's going on now with our T group, our Economic Alliance group, and that's a public-private, which we're investing somewhere. It used to be around $200,000 a year. But the biggest thing will help economic development has been discussed, infrastructure, and as Mike said, millions of dollars, and I don't know where that's going to come from. But we got to reduce regulations, keep taxes low as we can, and work in the private sector and get the government out of the way.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Paige Lamell.
did such a good comprehensive study of the needs in economic development, and that several years ago with the Goldsmith Group, and we developed a great plan that led us to form the public-private partnership and the Transylvania Economic Alliance. I think what's important for us as a county is to continue to support the Economic Alliance and then continue planning for additional infrastructure expansion. The Rosman sewer expansion is very, very exciting. And we know from all of the reports that we've seen and the feedback we've gotten that having infrastructure in place makes a site attractive for businesses. We just don't have enough infrastructure. We also need to develop programs for our youth that allow them to be job ready when they graduate. Mentorship programs, internships, whatever that looks like is necessary. And again, like Mike said, we've got to have some place to house them. Our workers cannot afford to live here. And that is something we've got to work together on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from David Siniard.
One of the big things I think is education. We've got a wonderful college here, Brevard College. We've got a great community college, Blue Ridge. We got a great high school program at both Rosman and Brevard. We need to develop things for our students to stay here. And we need to come up with ideas that create and match what we have become. We can look at different manufacturers, but we do need infrastructure. We got to have sewer and water. We definitely have to have that, because in the other counties around us, the interstates, the different places, they're going to look there for first. So we need to develop something that we can attract other manufacturers into our community. And that's one of the things is education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, we will hear from Carl Conley, please.
Thank you. As everyone has already stated, infrastructure is the big thing. You gotta have a means to expand the infrastructure, to make it attractive for a business to want to come here. Regulations is another thing. We can't be punitive in our regulations to make it more attractive for a business of that nature to come here, because at the end of the day, you got to make the area look like it's going to be a viable and sustainable area for a business of that nature to come here. To reiterate something that I think it was, I forgot who said it, but education is the key. Gotta have a workforce ready, and like mentorship programs, and using our education system to have a viable workforce at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question, we're going to start with Jason Chappell, and it is a question about the Acoustic Trail. What is your position on the Acoustic Trail and potential funding for the project? We'll start with Jason Chappell.
It's probably appropriate it starts with Jason Chappell on this one. I have major concerns about the Acoustic Trail. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. And the reason I have major concerns, there are still some property rights issues that have to be evaluated. I know they're saying the large majority is owned by Norfolk in fee simple, but there are some private property owners that haven't been addressed yet. That's going to have to be addressed. Other things going to have to be addressed is this sale's probably going through. We understand that. I mean, from the federal money is going to the conservancy who's apparently going to buy the property. What happens after they buy it? Are they going to turn it over to all the counties? Transylvania County Commissioners have not voted to accept any property if that's the case. That's a discussion that needs to happen. There's a lot of unknowns with this project. Additionally, the funding to potentially fund ongoing operations, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's Parks and Rec, whether it's housekeeping, whatever it may be, is going to be a tremendous ongoing amount. We have no idea what amount that may be.
Next, we'll hear from Mike Hawkins.
Yeah, I support the Acoustic Trail. I agree with Jason that there's a lot of due diligence that remains to be done on that. And part of the problem, and I'm on that committee. I'm the one person on this phone call who's actually sitting at the table with that committee that's talking about this stuff. Part of the problem is that Henderson County is going in their direction and really not. I don't think there's a good partnership right now between Henderson County and Transylvania County, and that's something, as Jason alluded to, that's something that needs to be worked on. The transfer is going to take place. It's going to be transferred from Watco over to Conserving Carolina. Again, I'm in favor of it. I think it's a good use of that asset, but there is significant due diligence still to be done, and we're in a different situation financially. Transylvania County is in a different situation financially than Henderson County is, and so certain funding sources that Henderson has, we do not have, and so those are the sorts of things that we need to work out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Larry Chapman.
Initially, I was very opposed to this project whenever we had some possible viable options for the Acoustic property. As far as the trail, if things can be worked out with the adjacent property owners, and there's been all kind of rumors of what's involved or what's not. My concern is, as Mike mentioned, money. Transylvania County, with a recent 24% tax increase, we're having to use fund balance to balance the budget. I do not support putting any local funds into this at this point. We don't have the money. If the money can come from the private sector and the property issues can be resolved with adjacent property owners, then it would probably be a good project for the county. But there's a lot of hurdles, as we've already mentioned.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Paige Lamell.
I too support the development of the Acoustic Trail, but like others have alluded to, we just can't afford to do it in this county. We're in such a different position. Henderson County, as part of the MPO, just received $7 million to a grant to work on developing the trail. We're in the RPO. The value of the RPO is so much more important to us that we don't qualify for those funds. So the ongoing operations are definitely a big consideration, as is the remaining due diligence. What this does, though, is it gives us an opportunity to be part of a larger region of recreation, tourism, and we know that we've got the most attractive section because everybody wants to ride their bike into Pisgah National Forest. So I think overall it's very definitely a positive for the community. It is coming to figure out how to pay for it. And we need that public-private partnership that exists, that can exist through the different entities already at the table. We need to be a player. We need to control how it rolls out in Transylvania County.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from David Siniard.
The Acoustic Trail is a great option. My concerns is, again, financially, with our tax base, with the financial issues we have today, and later on down the road, the maintenance of it, safety. Are we going to have emergency portals? Are we going to have places if somebody doesn't have their phone, has an accident? And again, the property owners. Some of them have communicated with me, they wouldn't mind having it, but are we going to put things up to keep their private areas, going, their land, their property, their homes? But I think it would be good if we could use this to attract people in and stay in our county, not just the ones that come into our county, ride, and then leave. If we can keep them in this community, look what it would do financially for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Carl Conley Jr.
I personally, I support the Acoustic Trail. Once again, to just beat that horse, how we're going to pay for it, how we're going to get the mesh between the property owner, the private property owners, and long term, like Coach said, how we're going to maintain it. What's the economic impact of maintaining it and things of that nature. But like everyone else said, just at this point right now, the funds for this is a large hurdle, and there's a lot of due diligence that does have to be done to support that project. But anything that supports wellness and recreation and activity amongst our citizens, I'm all for. Thank you.
Thank you. Last, we'll hear from Teresa Mccall.
And once again, I will start by saying this question too comes up every 2 years. So at some point, it does need to be resolved. I will say I don't have a problem with recreational opportunities. I don't have a problem with trails. We have many trails in Transylvania County, in the forest, U.S. Forest Service, on the Blue Ridge Parkway. We're not at lack of having trails. What I do have a problem with is infringing upon property owners' rights. And if the deeds that the property owners have show that they have reverter rights. There is a Supreme Court case that has already set precedents that that property belongs to them. So I am not for seizing property. You know, there's a long-term financial commitment as well that has to be figured out. But if every property owner today said, yes, here you go, let's build the trail, we still have that dilemma of finances. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with Mike Hawkins, and this is a question that many of you referenced about infrastructure. Specifically, this is about high-speed internet access. How would you increase access to high-speed internet service throughout Transylvania County? Beginning with Mike Hawkins.
And answer it in a minute, okay? First of all, it's a rural problem. It's not just Transylvania County problem. And it has three components. The three components are the reach of the service, as to say how much of the county is covered with broadband. Secondly, the quality of the service, how the download and upload speeds, how good are they? And then finally, the affordability of the service. Can you afford it? Is it a competitive price? You got to have all three. You can't have two of the three. It doesn't work if you just have two of the three. How do you do it? The strategy that exists now that we're working on, that I'm part of, is trying to do a free market approach, because the state legislature and the federal legislature won't let local governments get involved in it. And they're very committed to a free market approach. So we're working with Land of Sky to try and incent providers to come in. I'm skeptical. I don't think that will work. But that right now is the alternative that we have. Long-term, we need to get a different approach from the people above us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Larry Chapman.
Again, this has been an issue as long as I can remember, since high speed's been there. This has to be a private endeavor. You know, government's not going to make this a utility and run it. As we've heard on things, the cost, if it was profitable, we would already have it. So we have to figure out what you're going to do. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars for that quote last mile, but we have to have it, but it'll have to come with help from outside the county, because the county doesn't have the money, nor the resources, nor the authority to do much with internet or high speed.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Paige Lamell.
Honestly, I don't think anybody could have answered the question better than Mike did. I agree wholeheartedly with what he had to say, and understanding the frustration in being in county government when the state will not allow you to do this. I would disagree a little bit with Mr. Chapman in that, government exists to provide solutions to problems that private enterprise has not solved or has not picked up. And the problem here is, because we are last mile, because we are rural, we're not going to have somebody come in and want to lay a bunch of fiber in the ground because there's no return on their investment. This is an area where this will have to be subsidized. And the greatest gift that the state legislature and the federal government could do for all of us is to declare broadband a necessary utility and look at the expansion opportunities, just as they did with the rural electric program and telephone service back in the 20th century. We've got to have it done differently from above. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, David Siniard.
Options. Mike, I definitely agree with Mike. Mike made some good points, great points. We need it. It's one of the needs. We've got to come up with something. We need it in our education of these kids. We need it for families to move here, that want to move here, that work from home, young families that move here, that want to bring their kids here and live here. That puts their young kids maybe in our school system, which would help our school system. But options, we need to look at all options. We need, like Larry was talking about, some of the private sector, we need to look at different options to try to get broadband in here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Carl Conley Jr.
The great thing about going after everybody else is most everybody says what you're going to say anyway. I think Mike nailed it right off the bat. It's something we need. We have to move forward. It's also one of the infrastructure items that you need to attract business. But the problem being, like everybody else said, it's just how do you control it? just the rural aspect of it. You know, we don't have flat land and buildings and pavement and underground tunnels we could put this stuff in. You know, you've got to take this thing up the side of mountains and through forest and not forest, but through rural upside of through wooded areas and everything else. And it's an attraction that will draw people here in the long run, especially to the parts of the county where we can still move houses in. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Teresa Mccall.
Okay, I could tell you all kinds of reasons why we need expanded broadband access. How to achieve that is a little different. I do agree with much of what's been said. It's going to take more than county government finding a solution. We have, we're surrounded by rural counties that are dealing with the same thing. Maybe some partnerships might be an option. We have students right now who are struggling because their learning is online and they don't have that reliable access. So again, I could talk about the need for, as long as you want to. How to achieve it, it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of people working on the solution to help our counties, especially our rural counties.
Thank you. Last, we'll hear from Jason Chappell.
I agree, as everyone has said, it's a major issue. I can tell you personally how it impacts my daughter and my son's learning every single virtual day. And now I'm having a hotspot to participate in this Zoom meeting at home where my normal internet will not work. It's a major issue. Now, I will say, even when I was back at when I was the chairman of the Regional County, that's when we started talking about that issue and said this is something that regionally is going to have to look at, and then it moved forward. And I appreciate the work that's been done since then. Last year, I went up to Washington, D.C. advocating with our federal partners. Sit down at their desk and told them those specific stories about how we need that and how we need the federal government to help rural communities. And I think that's how it's truthfully it's going to happen. We're going to have to continue to advocate with our state partners, continue to advocate with our federal partners, continue to approach with the private industry as well. It's not going to one simple solution. It's going to take all those coming together.
Thank you. And this will be our last question. Our last question is about the courthouse. Some of you mentioned that. The question that we will begin with Larry Chapman. The question is, there are 4 sites being considered for construction of the new courthouse. Which site do you favor and why? Mr. Chapman.
This issue has been going for probably 20, 25 years. We thought we had a solution a few years ago, but we failed to act. And it cost, the only thing that's changed since then is the price has gone up about $6 to $7 million. At this point, I don't have a preferred solution. My question is going to be, should I get elected, to the other commissioners to raise your hand if you're ready to raise taxes to build a courthouse. We just had a 24% tax increase, and I don't think we can go back for another 4 or 5% to our citizens. So until we agree that we're willing to raise taxes to build a courthouse, to me, it's kind of a moot issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Paige Lamell.
I don't really have a preference on where it's located. I think we've received a lot of good input from citizen committees. We've got the recommendation of mostly architects. We do have options, but to Larry's point, the finances are a big concern right now. We have got to assess where we are dealing with the impact of COVID on the county budget. I think we could potentially make a decision on a location pretty quickly, but we cannot even talk about beginning to pay for this until we get through the COVID crisis. It is absolutely a need. I think we're walking on thin ice right now with our with our judges. They know that we need a new courthouse, but we've got to figure out our financial situation. We cannot overly burden our citizens. And I'd like to see more input from them on site selection. Thank you.
Thank you. David Siniard, please.
With my job in the school system, it's really hard when I would go in with families and students. And in the old courthouse, I think they moved into it in 1874, 1875, and I see 300 people sitting on stair steps waiting to get in the civil trials while criminal court is going up in the courthouse. We need to do something, but the sad thing about it, like everybody is talking about, with the COVID hitting, with other things hitting, we got to come up with a decision on it. I personally, I've talked to some people that are involved in the courthouse, work at the courthouse. One of the things that they were bothered about, and I sort of tend to agree with them, is the parking deck. You know, keeping up with it, keeping the cleanliness of it, keeping the safety of it, women coming out in the dark, going in the parking deck, things like that. That is a concern for me. But right now, like everybody else has said, financially, it's tough.
Thank you. Now, Carl Conley Jr.
As far as where the new courthouse should go, I'm still in the infancy of even looking at it. A lot of my cohorts here have had time to really think about it, but I don't as of right now, I don't have a preference. To echo everyone else's concern, how do we pay for it? Are we willing to raise taxes in the wake of everything that's going on in the world and just in our area? You know, there's a lot of, you know, we've got the school bond increase to think about. We've got you know, with a lot of people in the financial bind, how do we go back to the community and say, hey, we need to raise your taxes another 5% so we can pay for this pretty new courthouse? So like everyone else has said, it's just the financials of it is just baffling right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Teresa Mccall.
I think it's easier to answer whether something needs to be done versus where a courthouse should go. I will say that I love seeing the courthouse downtown. I grew up here, born and raised here in Transylvania County, and that courthouse means something to me. There are some people that say we don't need to do anything, and I would challenge everyone to give Christy Brown a call and go and take a tour of the existing courthouse. Something has to be done. This decision, again, is one that has been kicked down the road and kicked down the road and kicked down the road through, you know, I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. It's just a decision that has been delayed and delayed and delayed until now. We're looking at millions more than it would have cost, say, 10 years ago. The one piece that concerns me is that I'm not seeing any projected cost on repairs and renovations to the existing courthouse, which is part of the equation. If you're going to build a new courthouse, what are you going to do with the old courthouse? It's a historic structure, and we need to think about that.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jason Chappell.
You know, the proposals that we had in our last meeting has generated this question really was at the direction of county commissioners to, if the same courthouse would be able to do the exact same on all 4 spots, what would it cost? What would it look like? That was just to get a somewhat of a comparison. This is still not, it's not a decision of we're going to pick this one right here, right now. That was really not the purpose of that study, at least not in my own mind. Now, if you're narrowing down spots, I'll be honest, I'm going to go ahead and say I think the South Broad Park has some opportunities there because of the parking, because of some opportunity, something downtown or another option downtown. But the big elephant in the room, if we want to say that, is the fact of our budget right now, is the fact of, Teresa alluded to it at the very beginning. Just talked a couple of weeks ago with the state senator, and they're talking about billions lost in potential revenue next year. There's a good possibility a lot of that's going to be passed down to counties. Now it's not, we cannot build a brand new courthouse right now. We're going to have to look at some other type of options in the meantime.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Mike Hawkins.
The only thing I would add is that it's not a binary decision. It's not a decision that says, well, we're either going to build a courthouse or we're not going to do anything. If we choose not to build a new courthouse, then to Teresa's point earlier about renovation of the old courthouse, we're going to have to do extensive either addition work to the current courthouse or renovation work to the current courthouse, or come up with some solution to the very real problems that David was talking about with people who standing outside and all of those things. I think a new courthouse would add 3 cents. I think you could do a courthouse for 3 cents. We've already reserved 2 cents. Previous commissioners have reserved 2 cents. I think an additional 3 cents would get it done. I would hope that if I am honored to be reelected, that during this next term, that would be one of the things that we got accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody's time. I know there are so many topics that we could talk about or focus on, but now we want to begin our closing. You'll have 1 minute to kind of finalize your thoughts and what you want to say to our listeners here. And in this phase, we will begin with Paige Lamell. Paige?
So much for allowing me to put my thoughts together there, Graham. I just, thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate the chamber doing this and your moderation of the evening. I've served for 8 years. I am one of the hardest working county commissioners. I thrive on public-private partnerships and proactive problem solving. I like to identify our community's needs and issues, and I work very, very hard to address those by assembling the stakeholders in the room and having them give me input on what our solutions look like. We've been very successful in addressing community problems through that method, specifically the progress that's been made in early childhood in the Get Set initiative with our Sesame Street partnership, and additionally the work I'm doing on senior services and the mental health forum and other problems that are identified. I ask for your vote because I believe that I'm a committed county commissioner who believes in the power of this community and our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from David Siniard.
Well, just to touch on what Paige just said, I'd like to thank you. You did a great job tonight with all these people. I'd like to thank the other candidates. They're great people, fantastic people. I don't think anybody could go wrong. One of the things that I did working in the school system and working with at-risk kids, I always did things with character, commitment, and compassion. I used to tell kids that all the time when I'd go into their homes, the one thing you can't run from is your character. And after you develop that good character, you got to have a commitment for your future and then have compassion to go for it. I feel like I have compassion. I feel like I have character, and I know I would be committed to Transylvania County as their commissioner. And thank you so much for your job tonight.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Carl Conley Jr.
First, thank you to the chamber. Thank you to Mr. Fields for running a smooth ship here. What can I say? As far as the people I'm sitting here talking with tonight, some of the most qualified people, lots of accomplishments, some very deeply rooted government ties with my I will call these people my peers. I don't have their qualifications, but why I think you should vote for me in the long run is I care about Transylvania County. This is my home. I was born here. I was raised here. I hopefully one day will retire here. Vote for me is a vote for the county, and I really believe that I can do a great job, and I really would appreciate everyone's vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Teresa Mccall.
I too would like to thank everyone that was part of putting this forum together and all the candidates participating. In closing, I want to share 2 things with our listeners. And going back to my career with the National Park Service, during my time as Chief of Administration for the Blue Ridge Parkway, this sign hung in my office. I hope that you can see it. It says, "Every dollar spent by this government comes from the pocket of a working American. Our challenge is to act as if it were our own." Everyone I worked with knew how seriously I took that quote. I think it's a commitment that every elected official should have. The other thing I will share with you, Our retiring chief of maintenance at the time I retired wrote me a note, and I want to read part of that note to you. In looking back at how our careers evolved over time, it was apparent to me early on that you were someone who could be depended on to provide sound advice and direction related to all matters concerning budget and finance. Your approach to problem resolution was always about taking care of the people involved in the outcome, not just solving the problem. That is one of the things that I admired about working with you over the years. That's my commitment to Transylvania County. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Jason Chappell.
Everyone else is saying thank you to all those involved. But I want to go a step further. Thank you for allowing me to be one of your county commissioners over these last few years. It has been the honor of my life, getting to serve you, getting to be your voice in the process. And that's what I've tried to be. I've tried to first listen to every side of every issue, no matter if you voted for me, no matter if you campaigned against me. Once you become a county commissioner, all that goes away. What I try to do is listen to every single person that's ever brought an issue to me, look at all sides of every issue, pray about it, research it, try to become as knowledgeable on every issue as I possibly can. And then I voted for what I believed was best for Transylvania County. I voted for what I believed would be best to help position Transylvania County for the future. You know, behind me, there's a picture, and you probably can't see it. One is Avery, me holding Avery while I'm at a podium. Another one is Jesse and Avery holding my Bible when I took my oath. I want to give them the opportunities they gave me. I humbly ask for your vote. I humbly ask to get to go back to Board of County Commissioners, and I thank you for this opportunity. May God bless you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Mike Hawkins.
I think the best compliments come from people who know you the best, people who have worked with you, see you all the time. And to that point, I want to mention that I've been chairman of the Board of Commissioners for 8 years. Every time that I've put my name forward, the commissioners have chosen me to be the chairman. And I say that again, simply to say that the best compliments come from those who know you the best. And the other commissioners have chosen me as chairman, not once or twice, but 8 times. I mean, year after year after year. And that includes 3 people on the phone call here tonight. So I know what they think about me. And I think that they know what I think about them, the respect that I have for them. And the biggest professional honor I've ever had is this thing about being chairman. And that's the truth. I hope that I can earn your trust at home. I hope that I deserve your vote at home, because it would be an honor. Jason's word is the correct word. It's an honor to get a vote from someone, and I deeply appreciate your support, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Larry Chapman.
I'm going to close where I started. It's with 6 words: make our county best in state. Everything we've discussed here tonight needs to be weighed against what those policies and votes mean to making us the best in the state. All I can do is I promise the citizens of this community that I will provide strong, ethical, and accountable leadership as I have in the past, working toward, again, making our county best in state. On my wall, I have a poster. It says, leadership is action, not position. Commissioners require action and not just position, and it requires a lot of effort, time, and I've committed to that in the past, and I will commit to that again. I want to thank the chamber. Thank you for hosting this thing. And I want to thank all the citizens, and I would appreciate your vote in November. And God bless our community, and God bless our nation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you all for your thoughtful answers and in keeping with the time. So we are all finished with this first panel, and we will move toward our Board of Education, our panel 2. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're. All right, folks, this is Clark. Graham, you may want to mute yours while I'm talking here for a second. So let's see. I see Teresa Mccall, or her name at least. I see Alice Wellborn. I see Ron Kivinimi. I see Tawny McCoy. I think that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that is everybody. As a reminder, while I believe Willow has the shared screen up, I think everybody can hear us, so don't say anything questionable at this time. I'm going to mute myself just for a second to see if Willow, Graham, and I need to huddle up on anything real quick.
I think we're missing Kimsey Jackson.
What am I doing?
Real quick, folks, this is Clark again. I'm going to call on everyone and ask you to unmute and say your name just to be sure we can hear you. Then I think we're going to get started. Alice Wellborn.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Alice?
Yes, can you hear? No?
Let me see. Yeah, I might be.
Should I try to dial in again? Should I try to dial in again? I
You're
can't
good.
hear
We
you.
got you. We got you. Thank you. Ron Kivinimi,
Okay, great. Thank you.
you're muted. Unmute and say hello.
Hello, how is everyone this evening?
We got you. Tawny McCoy, if you'll unmute and say hello.
Hello, hope everyone's well.
We got you. Kenzie Jackson, if you will unmute and say, well, you're unmuted. Will you say hello?
I'm here. Hello.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to depart and turn it over to Graham Fields, moderator.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome. Very excited to have you. And what we want to do is we're going to get started before the first question. We're going to have, which will be essentially your introduction, and also really more a question of how you view the role of the school board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read all of your bios, and then we are going to begin with Kimsey Jackson and do our introductions, our opening statements with kind of that direction of how do you view the role of the school board. So I will begin with reading the biographies. We'll start. These are our candidates for the Transylvania County Board of Education. And our first candidate is Richard Kimsey Jackson. Candidate Richard Kimsey Jackson is a Transylvania County native. He graduated from Brevard High School and received an electrical engineering degree from NC State. Kimsey worked for Florida Power and Light before his retirement. He served on the Brevard Planning and Zoning Board for 8 years and as chair for 1 year, and is the current chair of the County Planning Board. He also served on the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce and Venice, Florida Hospital. Mr. Jackson was an assistant Boy Scout master, coached Little League teams, and was a Rotary Club member for 43 years. He is also a Baptist deacon. Kimsey and his late wife have a son and 2 daughters. Our next candidate is candidate Ron Kivinimi, and his candidate Ron Kivinimi graduated from Scottsburg High School in Scottsburg, Indiana. He received a bachelor degree in elementary education from Berea College and a master's degree in middle grade education from Western Carolina University. He has also participated in the UNC Charlotte Principals Executive Program. Ron is currently employed with Transylvania County Schools. He has served the Transylvania County Board of Education and the NC School Board Association and is president of the Transylvania County Association of Classroom Teachers. He also serves as a board of director member for the Boys and Girls Club, as a deacon for Pisgah Forest Baptist Church, as assistant scoutmaster for Boy Scout Troop 703, and as a youth soccer, baseball, and basketball coach. Mr. Kivinimi has received the awards for Transylvania County Principal of the Year and Brevard Middle School Teacher of the Year. He and his wife have one child, Mark. Our next candidate is Tawny McCoy. Candidate Tawny McCoy graduated from Rosman High School and attended Brevard College. Tawny is currently employed as a Judicial Services Coordinator with the Department of Public Safety. She has served on the Transylvania County Board of Education since 2008, was Vice Chair for 3 years, and has served as Chair since 2012. She is the Board Representative on the Bond Construction Committee and has previously served on the School Health Advisory Council and Backpack Buddy Advisory Council. Ms. McCoy is also an active member of Rosman Baptist Tabernacle, serving as pianist and Sunday school teacher. She and her husband, Keith, have one son, Adam. Our next candidate is Alice Wellborn. Candidate Alice Wellborn graduated from Scripps College in California with a BA in psychology and earned an MA in child psychology from George Peabody College in Nashville. Alice is an adjunct professor at Brevard College, teaching educational psychology. She was a school psychologist in Transylvania County for 35 years before retiring in 2013. Alice received an Award of Honor from the North Carolina School Psychology Association for her advocacy on behalf of children. She is currently a member of the Transylvania County Board of Education. She also serves on the NAACP Executive Board and Education Committee, the Get Set Early Education Team, Friends of the Library, the Steering Committee for Blue Zones, the Advisory Board for Western Carolina University School Psychology Programs, Coordinator for the Everyday Education column in the newspaper, and Secretary for the new Community Relations Board. Alice has 3 grown sons, Sam, Calvin, and Frederick. Our last candidate is actually a previous candidate and a statement. This is from Anna McCall. After much reflection, Anna McCall has decided to suspend her campaign for Transylvania County Board of Education. She would like to take this time to thank everyone that has supported her through this journey. When she began this journey in December, her focus was on serving the stakeholders of Transylvania County schools with her full time and attention. Due to the adjustments the world has made as a result of the COVID pandemic, she feels she cannot successfully balance working full-time while facilitating virtual learning with her children and fulfilling her responsibilities as a school board member. She has learned so much through this process, and she is excited for the opportunity to serve again in the future. She's grateful for your support and understanding. So we will begin with our introductions, our opening statements. We'll begin with Kenzie Jackson, and remember that the intro question is, how do you view the role of the school board? And you'll have 1 minute. Thank you.
There, and now I bet you can hear me. I said thank you for the chamber for this opportunity, and I view the school board as a board of directors for the Transylvania County system. We are to monitor the budget. We are to look after the situations. We need to be aware of what's going on. We need to know how the money is being spent, and we need to bring our real life experiences to helping run the school system. I believe in being fiscally conservative, and I think I can bring to the board a lot of that situation. I was a division construction manager for Florida Power and Light Company. I ran an operation of $40 million construction budget, 600 company personnel. So I know what it means to put a budget together and make it work.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Alice Wellborn.
Public schools are funded through taxpayer dollars. So the school board's most important job is to make sure that those tax dollars are spent efficiently and effectively to offer our children a strong, well-rounded education with an excellent teacher in every classroom and an excellent principal in every school. That's what this community has always valued, not the cheapest education, but the best education that we can provide. The school board also sets the policies and priorities that govern the schools and inform the decisions the superintendent makes. The school board oversees the superintendent, who runs the day-to-day operations of the school system. School board members are the voice of the community. They are accountable to the taxpayers for how our money is spent and what our children get for that money. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Tawny McCoy.
Thank you. Thank you to the Chamber for sponsoring this event. The role of the Board of Education includes establishing policies to ensure that our local schools are in compliance with state and federal laws. We also are responsible for employing, supporting, and evaluating the superintendent, for supporting our students, but our teachers and our staff, as we cannot educate our students without those excellent teachers and staff. Annually, the board prepares a recommended budget for presentation to the commissioners for the local portion of the school budget. But to summarize what that actually means for our community, I believe that the Board of Education provides the vision and direction for our school system. We advocate for our students, whether that means providing a safe environment in our classrooms or making sure that they have a full stomach when they leave us to go home. The role of the Board of Education is to care for our students, our teachers, our staff, and to provide the best educations possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ron Kivinimi. I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing your name. I apologize.
That's quite all right. I was known most of my teaching and principal career as Mr. K, so if you'd like to use that, please feel free to do so. Just one clarification. I'm not currently an employee of the Transylvania County Schools. That would be a violation of state law to be employed by the school system while serving on the board, but I am retired from the school system. The role of the Board of Education is very specifically set out in state statutes. Basically, we have the responsibility for everything related to the public schools in our county that is not specifically given to any other governmental entity. But I think more than just following the statutes, board members must be willing to work in a nonpartisan manner to support the best interest of all of our students. And I think board members must also be strong advocates for public education.
Thank you so much. We will move to our first question. And with our first question, we're going to begin with Alice Wellborn. And our first question is about teachers. And the question is, what would you do to recruit and retain high-quality teachers in Transylvania County?
There we go. That's a great question. I've been working this whole past year on a project for teacher recruitment and retention. We've had teachers come in, we've done surveys, and the biggest thing that teachers need is a bigger teacher supplement so that they can get paid a decent wage for what they do. Teachers also need affordable housing in this community. 25% of our teachers live out of county. That's not a good thing. Teachers need a whole lot more respect from the North Carolina General Assembly, who treat teachers very poorly. And they need respect from all of us, really. We'll continue to talk to our teachers about what they need and find out how we can best support them. We're continuing our teacher recruitment and retention efforts during this school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Tawny McCoy.
Thank you. I agree with what Alice says because as she said, our board members have already been working with our teachers to determine some of their needs. And we do need to work on that supplement so that they will feel that they are valued, because sometimes that's how we show them. But I also think that showing them respect and listening to what their concerns are, being an advocate for them in the community. I know we need more affordable housing, and the Board of Education has worked on that project and tried to be a partner with that. We would like to continue to do that so we could bring young people into our community and so that they would be able to afford to live here. But I think that we just need to listen and hear what concerns them. They are the ones that are in the classroom providing that instruction that our students need. And I think that's one of the things we need to do for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ron Kivinimi.
This is a difficult question. As I said in my earlier question about the role of schools, local boards of education have the responsibility for almost everything related to public education in their county. However, they have absolutely no fundraising authority. We are completely at the mercy of the North Carolina General Assembly and our county commissioners. If I were the king, we would have teacher salaries well above the $35,000 starting salary that we have now. We would have affordable housing in our county, and everyone would treat our teachers with the respect that they deserve. Since I'm not the king, I will continue to work in those areas to help recruit and retain teachers.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Kenzie Jackson.
I can echo what Ron just said. I think one of the biggest problems we have in this area is affordable housing. I really don't know how one or even two teachers can afford to live in this county. I think we need to pay an appropriate wage. I think we need to respect them. And I think some way or another, we need to partner with people in the community and have some affordable housing.
Thank you very much. Our next question, we're going to begin with Tawny McCoy, and the next question is about behavioral health. Mental health has a profound impact on education, as we all know, especially now. How can the school system support the behavioral health needs of its students?
Well, that's a tough question. I think that, again, we need to be able to address our students in the classroom as best we can, and we're trying to do that. I think we need to have our social workers, we need to listen to our school nurses so that they can help us learn what our students need. It's a very unfortunate situation when you have a student that you want to educate, which is our main goal, of course, and priority, but they have issues that they're dealing with at home or outside of the school that affects them in the classroom. So we have to try to find a way to provide the safest environment that we can for these students. And we need to be able to advocate for them. I think we need to really listen to those students and see what we can provide. Again, we only, as Ron mentioned earlier, we only have a certain amount of tools that we have in the school to provide them for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ron Kivinimi.
Behavioral health is at the forefront right now with our students having been isolated for months upon months. Alice is really our expert on this area, so I will defer to her except to say that we need more school guidance counselors, we need more school psychologists, we need more school social workers. We are seeing more and more children in our system with mental health issues. We've done a good job in the past in partnering with our regional mental health agency, but we need to move past that and get even more services than that agency could provide for us.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Kimsey Jackson.
Well, once again, I tend to agree with Ron. To be honest about it, I'm not sure I have any real solutions to this problem. It's a tough problem. It's one that affects many, many people in many ways. I agree that we probably need more mental health workers in the school and that we should look after our students. And as someone said earlier, just listening to them and finding out what their problems are can lead to solutions many times. So I would very much like to see us continue with good people in our mental health situation in schools.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Alice Wellborn.
Not being there, we go. Okay, I got it. Better student access to mental health services, behavioral support, social emotional learning opportunities are absolutely vital. And it's something that teachers really want when you talk to teachers about what we need to do to retain them. They don't feel like they can adequately deal with all the behavioral and mental health problems that are going on and still teach. We need more school counselors, we need more school social workers, we need more school psychologists. We have had day treatment. It was kind of a problem to put that together with outside people, and we're working on having day treatment programs ourselves. We're also working on a more restorative, responsive discipline system so that you are teaching children what they need to know to behave well in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Then the next question will begin with Ron Kivinimi. And the question is about COVID-19. As we know, some students have fallen behind due to COVID-19 closures and remote learning. What can the school system do to help them catch up?
I would like to see us be able to offer greater summer access to education for those students who have fallen behind. And I will say, I would not be surprised as a former classroom teacher if 75% of the students in my classroom wouldn't be behind where they would have been if we'd had a full year of education last year. I think we also need to look at other community resources to help with that, Boys and Girls Club, El Centro, and other agencies that work with our students after school hours.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Kimsey Jackson.
I heartily agree with Ron. I am appalled that our elementary students are not back in school full-time with in-person teaching. And I think that the solution would be to go back to full-time classes. It may have to wait till the summer. It may have to wait till next year. I'm convinced that the way things are being done now, and I have a teacher, I have a daughter who is a teacher in Duval County, Florida, and she would echo those words. She says that they're just not the same when you don't have in-person learning in the schools. So I hope we can very quickly get back to that.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Alice Wellborn.
I think one of the things the school board has always said is that our first priority is to keep our children safe. And that's why we don't have full-time in-person learning right now, because it's not safe for the children, it's not safe for the teachers. We all want to get back to in-person learning as quickly as possible because that's what works and that's where we need to be. There was a Jumpstart program last summer to get struggling students in, to give them some extra in the summer to try to get them caught up. We're going to have to do that every summer. We're going to have all kinds of programs to kind of catch kids up. Rise and Shine, Boys and Girls Club, El Centro are great partners with us for getting that done. Balsam Grove Community Center is providing some tutoring services for and for the children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Tawny McCoy.
I think that having as many of our students as feel comfortable being back in the classroom will begin that process of catching up for what happened when we had to leave the classroom in March. I think that's a start. I'm very proud of how our teachers have taken this virtual learning, and they have found new and creative and exciting ways to teach the students. I've also heard from some teachers that having the small number of students in their classroom are allowing them to work with those students, and they feel like that is giving them more access to be able to help the students along so that they are beginning to catch up. I agree that we're going to have to continue to partner with those community members. I also agree that we're going to have to continue with some summer programs so that we can provide all that we can so that we can help our students catch up, because this has been a very difficult time for the students and our teachers to stay where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll start with Kimsey Jackson for the next question. Next question is about workforce development. How can the school system support workforce development efforts to help students prepare for careers in the local economy?
That is a great question. I would say up front, let me say this. I do not believe that everybody needs a college education to succeed in life. And I would heartily support the programs we have in the schools that point students toward construction activities and other types of jobs that do not require college education. I also support, though, a strong push to prepare a student for a good college experience. I can truthfully say that I came out of Brevard High School. I was ready. I went to North Carolina State and I did well. But many students do not come out of our schools prepared, and we need to correct that. I would support having some contractors and that sort of thing, or other types of people come in and work with students in the high school to help prepare them for a good situation in life.
Thank you. Next, we hear from Alice Wellborn.
Yeah, workforce development is something that we've really paid a lot of attention to. Our superintendent was a career technical education teacher when he was during his teaching career, and it's something that's very close to his heart. We have a very strong relationship with Blue Ridge Community College. Many of our children go there and partner with Blue Ridge in taking classes. Davidson River students, our alternative school, are highly encouraged to go to Blue Ridge. And many of our kids graduate from high school with credentials because of our career technical education programs. They get CNA accreditation as auto mechanics, and it's a really important program. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Tawny McCoy.
I think that, as Alice just said, we have a great partnership with Blue Ridge Community College, which prepares our students to go directly into the workforce. We have a great CTE program in our schools. And I think we've done this before and we'll continue to do it. But I think, again, that communication, that partnership with the school system and employers, so that they can let us know what they need from our students, so we can work with either Blue Ridge or our own programs so that we can train our students in the areas that they need to be trained to go directly into the workforce. I also think that we also work in the classroom to teach our students some more of those what we call soft skills, so that they have the work ethic that they need, so that they know to show up on time and to be responsible. And I think that that's also a part of what we can do as educators to prepare our students for the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ron Kivinimi.
Alice and Tawny have already touted our relationship with Blue Ridge Community College, which does a wonderful job working with us on workforce development. And I think I'll take the rest of my time to tell the community some of the areas that we are already working with on workforce development. We offer graphic design in our high schools. We offer robotics. We offer carpentry, masonry, welding, office management, CNAs. We're on the verge of starting a pharmacy technician credentialing program as well. So we are doing a good job now with workforce development. We can always do better, and we will continue to work on that.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with Alice Wellborn, and this question is about race relations. Issues related to race continue to be a part of our national conversation. How can our local school system address race relations with young people in Transylvania County?
That's a really interesting question. I'm on the NAACP Education Committee, have been for several years, and we've worked very closely with the school system on these kinds of issues. And people from all of our senior staff have been really helpful in helping the Education Committee figure out ways to improve race relations. I think the Brevard High School has a club, an acceptance club that I think has been really helpful. And our high school principals are being very strict about any sort of bullying because that caused problems in the past. And we kind of jump on that immediately. And the Community Relations Board will be working on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Tawny McCoy.
I think, again, I keep saying this, but I think we need to listen. We need to listen to our students when they have an issue that needs to be brought to our attention. And I think, as Alice said, our administration and our staff are doing that so that they can bring those issues and problems to our attention. I think a while back, the board read a statement that said that we want to make we know that to make a meaningful change, the dedication and commitment to change must last far beyond this current moment. And we also said that racism is not tolerated in Transylvania County schools. And I think if that is the message that we send to our schools, then they will understand that that's the expectation. And we will work with them. And again, listen, if there's a problem, we want to know about it. We have worked on them in the past, and we will continue to work on that issue in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ron Kivinimi.
Tawny spoke to the resolution we dealt with this past school year on the issue of racism. And I think the board corporately spoke out very strongly about our opposition to any form of racism in our school system and in our county. I think we need to continue to develop policies that deal with the bullying issue and other issues that show intolerance of students who are different in whatever manner. It's our responsibility to provide a safe, healthy learning environment for all of our students, and that children of color, children of all colors.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Kenzie Jackson.
I'd like to start by saying that as far as I'm concerned, every student in our system deserves the best education we can give them without being bullied, called names, or discriminated against in any way. And I would support a strong policy in that situation. That's it.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with Tawny McCoy. And our next question is about the budget and working with the county commissioners. Some of you had earlier mentioned about funding and how that works. How can the school board work with commissioners to develop a budget and address school needs not met by the $68 million bond?
So I guess we're just talking about the school facility needs. So each year we do talk with the commissioners. We unfortunately at times in the budget process, I will say this, we get in an adversarial position with them just because of the way funding is done in the state of North Carolina. But we do work with them and we do talk and we do try to communicate well so that we can meet those needs. I think at this time we've heard from commissioners earlier tonight about COVID and how that's affecting the economy of our county, which I'm sure will also be a part of the conversation as it applies to the continued capital needs for the other schools. We do receive monies every year from them, and those will continue to be used, but those are used for maintenance and recurring items. So I just think it's a conversation that is difficult to know at this time. We've talked in the past and we had some ideas about how that we might be able to fund that through some other avenues, some other funding mechanisms, but I'm really not sure how we're going to do that.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ron Kivinimi.
Well, I think the board and the county commissioners are in a much better place as far as working together on this issue than we were 8 years ago when I first came on the board. And I credit Chairman McCoy for leading that effort. We are in an adversarial position with the commissioners, and it's because of the way North Carolina has structured school finance. I know this is kind of an esoterical answer. Statutorily, school systems are responsible for the capital needs of the school, or county commissioners are, and the General Assembly is responsible for the current operating expenses. Our General Assembly does not fully fund current operating expenses of the public schools as they should. If they did, it wouldn't be necessary for our county commissioners to appropriate $11 million each year. If they had that $11 million, they could put that toward the needs that we have for capital construction.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Kimsey Jackson.
What can I say? It is not good to be adversarial to your parents. Unfortunately, in this state, the school board is not a taxing authority. All of the taxing situation comes from the county commissioners, and they are jealous about protecting, taking money from people. We need to remember, as has been said earlier tonight, every penny we spend, every penny we put into a program comes out of the pockets of the people of this county, one way or the other. So I think the solution, and I found this in working with various sorts of people in my career, you have to sit down and talk. You may not be happy with what you hear. You may have to work through that and get over it. But in the end, you've got to work together. If I'm elected to the school board, I intend to be very close to the commissioners, sit down with them and try to work with them, sit down with the county manager, find out what she needs.
Thank you. Next, we have one final question before our closing thoughts, and this one will begin with Ron.
Whoa.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I got off track, Alice. I apologize. Sorry about that.
That's not a great question. Budget. I think Kimsey put his finger on the problem when he said you shouldn't fight with your parents, because I think the county commissioners often see themselves as the parents of the school board, and that we have to ask them for money, and then they wonder, oh, do they really need that money? And it becomes a hierarchical relationship rather than an equal relationship. And I really think that's the root of the problem with the school board and the commissioners. I think we need to work very hard on being respectful and being cooperative with each other, and understanding that we're both elected officials from elected boards with very specific duties that we need to take care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. I apologize for that oversight on my part. The last question, we will start with Ron Kivinimi, and the question is about measuring success. And the question that was submitted is, how should the work of the school board be measured?
I think the work of the school board is best measured by the success of our students. And if you look at our average SAT scores, which are above the state and national average, at the success our students have in debate, in agricultural competition, on state testing, in all of those areas, Transylvania County school students perform exceedingly well. And I think that is a direct result of the work of our superintendent, our teachers, under the guidance of the Transylvania County Board of Education.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Kenzie Jackson.
I can say amen to that because that's my exact feeling. You measure success by the results. And as far as I can tell, and the things I've seen and heard and looked at, the results from the Transylvania County school system are stellar. And I compliment the teachers, the principals, and the staff on the work they do.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Alice Wellborn.
Yeah, I think we can all say that we measure the success of Transylvania County schools by looking at the successes of our students who, as Ron said, excel in musical competitions, art competitions, science competitions. We win lots of awards. Our kids go to college. Our kids do well on tests. And when you compare with a traditional public school, the outcomes for a traditional public school with other public schools who don't have our constraints, we come out extremely well, extremely well. You know, we have more special education students. We have more free and reduced lunch students. We deal with the kids in the community who need the most, and we do a really good job of what we do with them. Thank
you. Next, we'll hear from Tawny McCoy.
I think, as everyone has said, of course, the success of the schools is the success of our students, but I also think it's measured by how well we prepare our students after they leave our school systems. So I think that, and I think we're doing a good job of preparing our students, as we talked earlier, for the workforce, they go to the next level, whether that be at our community college, which continues to prepare them for the workforce, whether they're already ready. When they leave us, they have certifications. We've talked about the CNA. They've passed their tests. Sometimes we have 100% passing, and they're ready to go immediately into the workforce. We have scholarships. I wouldn't begin to guess the number of scholarships that we have at all three of our high schools every year. And these students are able to go forward to continue their education and receive scholarships to do that. We have Moorhead scholarships winners, just to name one. And I think that that's some of the ways that we measure the success of our system. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're moving to the closing statements. We'll begin with Kimsey Jackson. Have 1 minute for some closing thoughts.
Well, first of all, again, I want to thank the Chamber for having this. Second of all, I want to ask the people of Transylvania County to vote for me. I bring the strength to the boards of the experience of dealing with people throughout my career and whatnot. I am an engineer by education. I am a manager of people, resources, and money by training and experience. I am committed to making sure that the students who come out of Brevard High School are prepared for life in our connected world, and that they do well in life, and that we do this in a fiscal conservative way, and I'm done.
Thank you very much. Next, we will hear from Alice Wellborn.
There I am. I'm running for re-election to finish what I've started. My priorities are complete the bond projects as promised, on time and on budget, work with community partners on internet access for all students and families, and a more effective online learning path, work on teacher recruitment and retention and increase the teacher supplement, value, respect, and support every member of the Transylvania County Schools family, better student access to mental health services, behavioral support, and social emotional learning opportunities, early childhood programs housed in our elementary schools to increase school readiness and support families, update and strengthen our attendance policy. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll hear from Tawny McCoy.
Thank you. Thank you to the Chamber for sponsoring this event and to Graham for moderating for us. I said a long time ago that I believe that children are a gift from God, and I still do. And it's been an honor and a privilege to serve on the Board of Education and to be a part of educating those children in Transylvania County. It was very humbling when the citizens voted for the bond referendum and to build the high schools and to put that kind of money into our school system. And I want to continue to serve you as the citizens to complete that project. We're not even quite what I would say in the middle of it, but we are certainly making progress, and I'd like to be there to be a part of continuing that. Everyone is touched by the school system, whether you have a child there, a grandchild, a niece, a nephew, a relative, you know a parent, you know a student, or you know a teacher. And school system is a very vital and important part of our community, and it's a privilege, and I would ask for your support to serve you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Last, we'll hear from Ron Kivinimi.
I'd like to say that I bring a wide variety of educational experience to the board. I've been in the education field for 41 years, 36 years in the public schools as an elementary and middle school teacher, an elementary principal, and 5 years as director of elementary education for Brevard College. I'd like to continue to offer that expertise to the board. I also pledge to work in a nonpartisan manner for the betterment of all of our students. And I'd like to close by saying I thank Graham and the Chamber for this opportunity. And based on the number of times that he's agreed with me tonight, I'd like to thank Kimsey for his endorsement of my candidacy.
Thank you. I am grateful for everybody's time and effort today. We appreciate all the topics that we got to, and are your candidates for the Transylvania Board of Education.
Thank y'all.
Thank you to everyone.
Hey there, folks. So we have Doug Miller, Jake Dalton, Kenzie Jackson. If you're able to head on from the call. Let's do a quick test. Jake Dalton.
Yeah.
Go Rosman Tigers.
It's it. Rosman Tigers, man.
Wait, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
Mm-mm. Oh, sorry. Say it again, Jake, will you? Now you're muted. Sorry. Try it one more time.
You got me now?
That's funny. Yeah. A Blue Devil made that mistake.
Yeah.
I had my computer turned off on volume, and so that was all me. Doug, let's see. I think you're a Tornado, so can you say hello, go Tornadoes?
Hello, go Tornadoes.
There you go. All right. I think we have everybody. I will stop talking now, and we will let our moderator, Graham Fields, taking on. Welcome, and thank you both for joining us.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to have two candidates for our Transylvania County Board of Commissioners. We've separated this because it is a separate race. And before we get into the questions, the first one will be kind of an intro that focuses on what your priorities are when you're elected. And what I'm going to do is, prior to that, I'm going to read for our listeners just the bios that you provided. So I want to start with candidate Jake Dalton. Candidate Charles Jake Dalton graduated from Rosman High School. He attended Brevard College for 2 years, then graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in exercise physiology from Lander University. Jake owns 2 businesses in Transylvania County, the Dalton Insurance Agency of the Carolinas and Next Level Fitness. He was an Aetna frontrunner in 2019 and was part of the Circle of Champions Marketplace in 2019 and 2020. Mr. Dalton has served on the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council for 1 year and with the Transylvania Economic Alliance for 6 years, where he was vice chairman for 2 years. He and his wife, Tanya, have 4 children, Shaniqua, Klein, Chantel, and Keegan. Our next candidate for the Transylvania Board of Commissioners is Doug Miller. Candidate Doug Miller attended high school at Rocky Mount Academy. He obtained an undergraduate degree in recreation and tourism from Appalachian State University and a master's degree in education from the University of Wyoming. Doug currently works as an adjunct faculty member and digital media specialist at Brevard College. During his time at the college, he has served on the Academic and Information Technology Committee, the Teachers Education Advisory Council, the Internal Marketing and Communications Committee, and the COVID-19 Advisory Council. He is a certified professional mountain bike instructor who leads the mountain bike program for Camp High Rocks during the summer season. Doug is also a certified wilderness first responder. Mr. Miller has served as a volunteer with SAFE, Pisgah Area Sorba, and the Transylvania County Arts Council. He is married to Emma Zanetti, and they have 2 dogs, Dolly and Rothko. So we'll begin this portion of our panel with that intro question: what are your priorities if elected? We're going to begin with Doug Miller, and we'll start now.
All right, so again, my name is Doug Miller, and I am running for Transylvania County Commissioner. The main job of a county commissioner is to set a budget. I believe that when public officials set a budget, they are stating what they truly value in their community. I want to improve support for education. Public education is the foundation of our democracy. If we are serious about preparing our youth for the jobs of the future, we need to be serious about how we support our school system. I want to expand access to high-speed internet throughout the county. I believe this is necessary to ensure the citizens in Transylvania County remain competitive in today's modern workforce. I support the expansion of our trails and pathways, which will create jobs and attract industry that seeks a location with a quality of life that only Transylvania County can offer. I support smart investments to attract industry, but I won't let industry take advantage of our resources, financial, natural, or human. We have to protect what makes this place special. So that's a bit about what I believe the job of a commissioner is, and that's what I'll do if elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jake Dalton.
Thanks, Graham, for moderating, and thanks to the chamber for putting this all together tonight. I appreciate it. First, I'd like to take a special moment of silence for Deputy Ryan Hendricks, who passed away in Hendersonville due to a gunshot. Our condolences to his family. If I'm allowed to continue in my current role as I want to continue with my economic development expertise in the background. We have phase 2 of the Sylvan Valley Industrial Building. Our Sylvan Valley Industrial Building is currently occupied under time. It was expected to take 24 months. It's taken less than 18. I'd like to extend the Jennings Industrial Park. I'd like to complete the Guy Herbs Water Extension from Rosman. We're also facing a $2.5 million shortfall due to the sales tax due to COVID. I'd like to see our budget balance.
Thank you. Our next question, we're going to start with Jake Dalton. And the question is about land use. Are you in favor of zoning for strategic land use? And if so, what is your top priority for new zoning in the county?
Well, as my experience shows on the TEA, zoning can be a good word or a bad word. Strategic land use. In our county, we have federal and state lands. We also have HOAs. We have conservative easements. We also have flood zones. So our zoning is already considerable within the county without us even touching it. Currently, the Cedar Mountain area and the Lake Toxway area are considering area plannings in those areas, which I support with local input. It's better for local people to take that initiative than it would be for a blanket statement from a county commissioner. Infrastructure corridors, such as the Guy Herbs extension from Rosman, you know, that's a good example of correct zoning there.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Doug Miller.
Thank you. I believe that we do need countywide land use ordinances. I think that's a critical part of making sure that we protect our resources here in Transylvania County. We need to protect our natural resources. We need to protect our human resources. We need to protect our financial resources. We need to do that by making sure we have a plan. And saying that, you know, having national forest here represents actual zoning is a bit misleading. I think that came up in the last forum, and I think it's still misleading to say that. We have to bring industry here, but we need to do what is right for this county, and we need to make sure that we're protecting what we have. That's going to include some countywide land use ordinances. Cedar Mountain Small Area Plan is great, but it's only part of the situation. We do need to be talking about this at a county level. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will stay with Doug Miller for our next question. And that question is about economic development. What would you do as a county commissioner to support economic development in Transylvania County?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Like I said in my opening statement, I support smart investments to attract jobs to this county, but we cannot let industry take advantage of us. The Transylvania Economic Alliance has really, they've received nearly $4 million in funding since 2015. That's not including the projects that they've put forth, and that's required even more funding, another millions and millions of dollars we're talking about here. So, you know, I want to make sure that we're not being taken advantage of, that we're getting a return on that investment. Some of the things that I would consider to be economic development include things like the Acoustic Trail. That would be a great investment in our community. Supporting education is another thing that I believe ties directly into economic development. We need to support our school system because that is one of the major reasons that people move to this county. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jake Dalton.
Well, to rebut what Mr. Miller said, in the last 5 years, when we first started the TEA, we had barely 300 manufacturing jobs. In the last 5 years, it's now over 750 manufacturing jobs in this county and continues to expand. As we continue our infrastructure building, that's only going to lead to future growth. It's imperative. For example, when we did the Sylvan Valley building, we used grant money. We collaborated with the city and the county, which has never been done in this county, and it opened up a lot of conversation to further our ability to build infrastructure within the county. Rosamond Town has just bought water system in Burlingame, which is going to open up that corridor on that end of the county, plus our Guy Herb's water and sewer extension through Rosamond.
Thank you. And Mr. Dalton, we will stay with you for the next question, sir. The next question is about the Acoustic Trail. What is your position on the Acoustic Trail and potential funding for the project?
Well, I met with Mr. Mark Tooley, who's on the on that board, heading that board, and he along with those members are working with Conserving Carolina, securing a grant for the Watco line. There are a lot of unknowns that due diligence still has to be worked out. For instance, property rights, ownership, does it revert back to the landowner? Does it revert to Conserving Carolina? There's liability concerns by those landowners. Also in Henderson County, they've taken the course that they're not going to use public funds. They're going to use grant money, and they've been successful in acquiring that grant money. And I know Conserving Carolina is currently working on grant money to purchase those land rails. What I'd like to see, along with the property rights question, is to extend the Jennings Industrial Park. We need an easement to cross over that line. So it would be good faith for them to give that to us.
Thank you. Now you'll hear from Doug Miller.
Thank you. Just to make a quick point about the number of manufacturing jobs that have grown in this county, I think part of what we need to do is look at where those numbers come from, because one of the things that's happened is the calculation for how we track manufacturing jobs here has changed a bit, and that has led to the increase, not really the increase that we have heard Mr. Dalton talk about. So we need to be accountable for things that we're doing here, and that's part of it, is speaking clearly to the voters here. In terms of the Acoustic Trail, I fully support the Acoustic Trail. I cannot say that loud enough. I fully support the Acoustic Trail. I don't know why our commissioners have taken so long to get behind this project. There are so many examples of other communities where this has been a huge boom for their economic development in their area. We have to stop wasting time, and we need to get to the point where we can support this project as a board of county commissioners. I do agree with Mr. Dalton that there are ways to fund this project through grants, and Conserving Carolina is working diligently on that. And I believe there's some great people who have already gotten a good start there. And as commissioners, we need to support their efforts.
Mr. Miller, we'll stay with you to receive the next question. Next question is about infrastructure, specifically high-speed internet access. How would you increase access to high-speed internet service throughout Transylvania County?
Thank you. That's a great question. The internet situation here in this county is something that we need to take seriously. I recognize the urgency in this issue. I work with technology every day, so I know what it means to have good access to the internet. We need to do more as a county. I've heard a lot of commissioners say that there's not a lot we can do, but we are doing things already, and we need to expand those efforts. We need to work on providing more public Wi-Fi access, and that means real access to high-speed internet, not DSL. So we need to make sure that we're working with Comporium, but we need to put pressure on Comporium to expand the access in places that they can. There's other creative things I think we can come up with, and I really want to start a community broadband commission if I'm elected. So I would like to see a committee of citizens come together. We have a lot of smart people in this county, and I think if we bring folks together to tackle this issue, we can get to some really creative solutions here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jake Dalton.
Thank you. Yeah, the county commissioners have funded all the community centers to provide public Wi-Fi. Even the town of Rosman was provided that through a grant. The TEA is currently, we're involved in talking to a Facebook executive who was instrumental in Polk County at setting up a nonprofit to compete with the local internet providers. And he was successful in doing that. Also, Haywood Electric Membership Cooperative, based out of Waynesville, who has an office in Lake Toxway as well, is currently polling to look at providing high-speed internet to those hard-to-reach rural areas that they already service with electricity. And so those are two viable options that are currently happening in our county behind the scenes that I'm involved in.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton. We will stay with you for the next question, which is about the courthouse. There are 4 sites being considered for construction of a new courthouse. Which site do you favor and why?
Well, the report was just for information gathering that was presented to us, and it was just basically a regurgitation of what had already been Do you hear me now? Because
yeah.
I was unmuted on my screen. I don't know what happened. Anyways, the report was just a regurgitation of what we already knew. The location, I'm not so hung up on the location currently as I am the problem of raising the tax dollars to fund that. Another commissioner stated it'd only be 3 cents to raise, 3 cents tax to raise. That nonchalantly saying 3 cents to raise the money, I'm just, that just irks me because we've already had a 24% increase in taxes due to the school bond. So I see I'm getting the letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Doug Miller.
Yeah, this is another one where we definitely need to recognize the sense of urgency here. This is a real issue, and the commissioners need to take this seriously. The courthouse needs to be upgraded. It's not big enough. If you've been in there for any reason whatsoever, you recognize the challenges with the current location. I do believe the courthouse needs to stay downtown. I think that's been made clear by the members of this community. When the courthouse question came up earlier, it became very clear to the commissioners that when they tried to locate it down by the Justice Center, that was not the decision the community wanted. I'll also say that, you know, locating a courthouse right next to your jail sends a signal that I'm not really comfortable with. I think the courthouse is a symbol of justice. I think it should remain downtown. People in this community are innocent until proven guilty, and we need to provide that signal when we decide where we're going to locate our courthouse.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, we're going to stay with you for the next question. And the next question is about balancing natural resources and tourism. How would you create balance in maintaining our natural resources and tourism in Transylvania County?
Absolutely. One of the things that I would like to look into is our occupancy tax. There's actually an option to increase the occupancy tax by another cent. We're now at 5 cents. We could make that 6 cents. And that would be something that does not directly get paid by the citizens of this community. So those funds can be used to help, bring more recreation and tourism to the area, but also provide certain infrastructure items for recreation and tourism. I also go back to what I said earlier, that we need to make sure we have a comprehensive plan for the county and that we're actually acting on that plan. We have to protect our environment, because if we don't protect our environment, our recreation and tourism industry will be affected negatively. So anytime we're talking about bringing industry to this county, we need to make sure we're doing so in a way that takes into account the vital and successful recreation and tourism that we have here in Transylvania County already.
Next, we'll hear from Jake Dalton.
Could you repeat the question, please? I had a lag.
Most definitely. It's how would you create a balance in maintaining our natural resources and tourism in Transylvania?
Okay. I don't know if this is really something that the county commissioners have authority over, because with the forest lands, state and federal, which we know are already being way overused. As an avid hunter and fisherman, I would like to see some kind of usage fee be applied, so they can participate in the upkeep of the trails and the bridges and so on like that. Because I know as a fisherman, I have to pay my annual license fees, and as my friends are hunters, they also do tags and license fees as well.
Mr. Dalton, we will stay with you for the next question. And the next question is about education. What do you see as the role of the county commissioners with regard to education in Transylvania County?
Well, we review the budget that the school system submits to us. We critique it. It's a difficult situation because many times there's some tension between the school board and the county commissioner, like we're at odds at each other. Because I learned that when the night I was sworn in, I could feel the tension in the room, and I was brand new, and that was just learning about what was going on. So I feel like there needs to be some more openness between the commissioners and the school board, and more delving into the reasons behind the budgetary concerns that they have, because we all know education is number one. We fund our students at one of the highest for the size of our county in the state.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Doug Miller.
Thank you. I believe the job of the commissioners is to work with the school board. I do not believe it is our job to police the school board. I think we need to develop the relationship with them, and we need to make sure that we're working with those elected officials. And that's a critical part of that. They are elected. They are accountable to the voters in this community. So if folks don't like what the school board is doing, there's an opportunity to vote for folks that they do like. And our job as commissioners is to recognize that they are elected officials, and we need to work with them to make sure that the education we're providing in this community is as good as we can offer. That's a really critical part of any service that we're going to provide here is our education system. The Transylvania school system is the biggest employer in this county. So we need to take that job of working with the school board seriously and get rid of any of the division that has previously been in existence there.
Thank you. We're going to stay with Doug Miller for 1 minute of closing comments. Final thoughts, please.
Okay. Before I read my closing statement, I just want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this. Public community-driven discussions like this are what local politics are really all about. I'll close by saying that when I'm elected, I'll do everything I can to support the needs of this community. I'll work with the towns of Brevard and Rosnan, local neighborhoods, and the school board, local law enforcement, and anyone else who is ready to make positive change in this county. When I'm elected, I'll do everything I can to ensure we get real access to high-speed internet. This will help make Transylvania County a realistic option for folks who are looking to bring their families and their business here. I'll work with our local institutions of higher education to ensure our community is prepared for the jobs of the future. We need to support innovation. We need to stop wasting time and money and start making the tough decisions that will help ensure Transylvania County is the best place it can be for all the folks who live here. So vote for me, Doug Miller, and I will get to work for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Jake Dalton.
Again, thank y'all for holding this. Appreciate it. Those that know me have known me that I've lived here almost all my life. I'm vested in this community, vested in this county. I've attended school here, both primary and secondary education. I have 4 children, 3 who live here, I have 3 grandchildren who live here. I want to see Transylvania County become better for our future generations. We have a perception in this county that it is not business friendly. We need to change that. And by building our infrastructure system, we can create opportunity for our future occupants of this county, whether young or old, and they can flourish instead of just trying to survive. And that's what I want to see happen.
Thank you. I appreciate this discussion. I appreciate your time. These are your candidates for Transylvania County Commissioner.
Thank you all for joining us, Doug, Jake, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks, we are going to say goodbye to those gentlemen and take a couple minutes. There we go. Sorry, and take a couple minutes getting the folks for our Senate and House races up, and we'll be right back. Folks, this is Clark. We are live, but we'll wait just a minute or two to get started here, and I'll be right back. All right, folks, I think that is everyone. So real quickly, let's just do a sound check. Brian, if you can say hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello. Did you get me?
Got that. Okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
Jake, if you can say green, green, green.
Green, green, green. Can you hear me, Clark?
Yes, sir.
Loud and clear.
Sam, if you can say rock, rock, rock.
Rock, rock, rock.
I was just going with the rocks behind you. Thank you. Here. Chuck Edwards, I see nothing behind you. So can you say nothing, nothing, nothing? Oh, there we go. Chuck, can you say something to us?
Yeah, hi there. How's everybody?
All right, I think we got everybody. This is just my part to do a sound check and say hello and thank you for coming. Our moderator, Graham Fields, has the floor, and we appreciate you being with us.
Well, good evening, everybody. We've had a great event so far, and we're excited to have our candidates for the North Carolina General Assembly, both the Senate and the House. And what we're going to do is, rather than just an intro from each person with a bio, I'm going to share some background on each of the candidates. And as we get started, that first question, the introduction, the opening statements, when I finish, please think about the question, which is really just kind of a get to know you of what do you see as the biggest challenge facing North Carolina and your constituents. So I'm going to get started with the candidates' bios, and then we'll start on the questions. The first candidate is for North Carolina State Senate District 48. That candidate is Brian Caskey. Candidate Brian Caskey graduated from Hendersonville High School in Hendersonville, Tennessee. He received a Bachelor of Science in Biology from Stetson University in DeLand, Florida, and a Master's in Liberal Arts from UNC Wilmington. Brian currently owns Biltmore Tutoring and Test Prep in South Asheville and is with his wife, Stacy. He also serves as Mayor Pro Tem on the Town Council in Mills River and is a board member for the Henderson County Transportation Advisory Committee, the French Broad River Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Land to Sky Regional Council, the Carolina Veterans Coalition, the Conserving Carolina Advisory Committee, and the Making Mills River Comprehensive Land Use Plan Steering Committee. Mr. Caskey is also a member of the Hendersonville NAACP chapter, the League of Women Voters, and the UNCW Sex Accreditation Committee, and a fellow of the UNCW Graduate Studies Mentoring Program. He and his wife, Stacy, have 2 children, Caitlin and Allison. The next candidate for the North Carolina State Senate, District 48, is Chuck Edwards. Candidate Chuck Edwards graduated from West Henderson High School and attended Blue Ridge Community College. He entered the business world at 16, working at McDonald's. After a successful career in corporate America, he purchased his own business. He is serving his 2nd term in the North Carolina Senate, where he has positions on 17 legislative committees. He chairs 5 and is on 2 state commissions. Chuck has been part of numerous nonprofit boards and clubs, and he continues his local community service while serving in politics. He was recently recognized by the North Carolina Chamber as a Jobs Champion, the North Carolina Sheriff's Association for Defending Public Safety, and Blue Ridge Apple Growers for Friends of Farmers Award. Chuck and his wife, Teresa, have a daughter, Kimberly, and their late son, Christopher. Our next candidate is for the North Carolina House District 113. This candidate is Sam Edney. Candidate Sam Edney graduated from East Henderson High School and then went on to attend AB Tech. He is a retired business owner of Pisgah Pest Control. Sam is a member of the National Pest Management Association, the North Carolina Pest Management Association, and holds a North Carolina Structural Pest Control license. Mr. Edney served on the SAFE Board of Directors from 2014 to January 2020. He served as board chair from 2018 to 2019. He currently serves on the board of the Acoustic Credit Union and previously served on the Transylvania County School Board. He and his wife, Dita, have 3 children, Jenny, Allison, and Katie. Our final candidate is for the North Carolina House District 113, Jake Johnson. Candidate Jake Johnson attended Polk County High School and received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science from UNC Charlotte. He is the current State House Representative for District 13 and works for the Hendersonville Berkshire Hathaway real estate firm. He is a member of the Henderson County and National Board of Realtors and was named Real Estate Champion by the North Carolina Real Estate Pact and Jobs Champion by the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. Jake serves on the Finance, K-12 Education, Regulatory Reform, Homeland Security and Veterans Affairs, and Wildlife Resources Commission committees in the General Assembly. He was also appointed by the North Carolina House Speaker to sit on the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Task Force. He has served on the Polk County Board of Commissioners for 3 years and also served on the Polk County Appearance Commission, the Juvenile Crime Prevention Board, and the Via County Commissioner Advisory Board. Please welcome all of our candidates. And we will begin our opening statements. Remember the question, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing our state and your constituents? And we will begin with Chuck Edwards.
Well, hi, everybody. I appreciate you taking time to be here with us this evening, particularly the VAR Transylvania Chamber of Commerce. I am so grateful that you've taken the time and the energy to put this together, particularly in this tough time that we're dealing with the pandemic. It's tougher for candidates to get out and about and educate the public as to our qualifications. And this gives us a rare opportunity. I appreciate that. I'm not going to begin making any comments without first calling attention and asking everyone out there to continue to keep Officer Hendricks and family in their thoughts and their prayers, and remind everyone that this is really a tough time for law enforcement, and it's time to double down and show our support for those folks. So with that, real quick, the biggest challenge that we're going to be facing in North Carolina is simply getting the state reopened, get it safely reopened. Way too many businesses that have not been allowed to yet reopen. And
Thank you.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Sam Edney.
Hi. I think the biggest problems facing North Carolina, one, is the COVID crisis. We find ourselves in a healthcare crisis, and we need to all stand together and respect each other and do those things that we know work, which is protect others around us by wearing a mask, socially distance, and protect ourselves and our families through hygiene. The second problem is going to be rebuilding the economy. What got us out of the Great Recession was our small business community, and small businesses are being devastated right now. One of the things that is really hurting the people in this district right now is the lack of childcare. If you have small children and you have no place to take your children when you go to work, that's a real problem for working families in this district. Finally, we need to get back on track with funding our public schools.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jake Johnson.
Have you got me, Graham? Can you hear me? Sounds good. Thank you so much. And to echo what Senator Edwards said, Officer Hendricks is in our thoughts and prayers, and his family and the whole law enforcement community. We have to, this is something that you see on the news but never expect to happen here, and we're praying for them. Some of the biggest, one of the biggest challenges from a legislative point of view, we're going to go back, or the representative is going to go back with a $5 billion shortfall to deal with in revenues. As a result of the virus and the executive orders and the economy being shut down, the state is going to really have to prioritize projects when we go back. And some projects that we thought may be a 1 to 3 year project, we may have to look at being a 3 to 5 year project. And we're going to have to really prioritize budgets, make sure we're spending every dollar and making it count, and really being conservative when we go back and look at this budget. And also making sure that as we offer relief to businesses and people, that we are offering the relief they need to survive without disincentivizing people to go back to work.
Thank you.
That's a very big balancing act as we go back.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Brian Caskey.
Thank you. I believe that North Carolina suffers from a failure of both leadership and vision in the General Assembly. Make no mistake, Chuck Edwards is the biggest failed leader in the Senate. He has consistently failed to vote for policies that would create an economy that work for all North Carolinians. Chuck Edwards has refused to expand Medicaid. He says to save money, when the real reason is that he's being paid off by dark money and special interests, like the PAC donations that he receives from the insurance industry. Expanding Medicaid would not cost the taxpayers anything extra because North Carolina is already paying for it. So it's a no-brainer unless you're already bought and paid for, like my opponent. It's time for the corruption to end. It's a time for moderation and fiscal responsibility, of course, but with all challenges come opportunities. Right now, it's a time for people who believe in a brighter future for North Carolina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question will begin with Sam Edney. And the question is about COVID-19. And the question is, what do you believe North Carolina's COVID-19 reopening policy should be right now?
Right now, we need to follow the guidelines that Governor Cooper has laid out. I think they've worked well to prevent us from having a real problem with COVID-19. We don't look like Arizona and Florida and these other states that reopened too early. Fortunately, our part of the state hasn't had huge problems with COVID-19. I think this is a once in a lifetime event, and we need to treat it as such. And we heard a lot about respect in the previous forums. And wearing a mask and honoring social distancing is a way that you can respect those around you. First thing we got to do is defeat the virus, and then we can get on with the rest of our lives. Until we do that, our economy is not going to grow. We all play a role in reopening North Carolina.
Thank you.
By following the guidelines.
Next, we'll hear from Jake Johnson.
Thank you, Graham. When this all first broke out, I presented to the governor what I thought would be a very reasonable plan for reopening that met a lot of the criteria we're still seeing in place today. My plan would have based things off region, off density, off outbreaks. What I have a hard time explaining to my constituents is, why are they being held to the same standard as a downtown Raleigh or a downtown Charlotte when we're not seeing the type of outbreaks we're seeing there at the density we are? We know who our vulnerable populations are. We need to absolutely work to protect those. I have not seen one plan come out on either side of the aisle that says we should put people in harm's way that have pre-existing conditions or over the age limit. No one's saying that. We definitely need to quarantine them and take every measure to protect them. But those healthy adults who can get back to work in low risk areas of the state with less outbreaks, I think they should be allowed to do so.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Brian Caskey.
Thank you. My opponent has said that the most common concern expressed to him by constituents is a fear for their safety. He says that it's his top priority to make sure that every reasonable precaution is taken to ensure the safety of citizens and of visitors to our state. And yet, he is an anti-masker. He puts partisan politics over common sense public health and safety measures. He puts people's health at risk every time he holds a public event and every time he walks over and breathes in someone's face. Edwards has pushed a reopen NC agenda. When we have seen that reopening too soon, as in California and in so many other states, is a clear and present threat to public safety. I believe in science and facts and data, and we will make it through COVID-19, but only if we pull together and encourage everyone to take precautions and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Now
heard
we'll
that,
hear,
Jake.
now we'll hear from Chuck Edwards.
Yeah, well, thank you, Graham, for that question. We have done the right thing initially by closing down the state and determining what it is that we're dealing with. We've learned a lot, the original closing of the state, and it's time to begin to reopen the state safely. Businesses have come forward with plans. I'm talking about bars and restaurants that need to expand capacity, and theaters. You know, North Carolina is the only state in the United States that won't allow folks in theater. You've got the Carolina Panthers that has a capacity of 90,000 people asking to only allow 12,000 in to watch a football game. We've got families out there that want to get back to work, that need to earn an income. We have small businesses that are suffering and are questioning whether or not they're going to be able to hang on for a few more weeks. There are ways that we can safely reopen this state. The other thing that we're going to need to look at when we get back into session is the unbelievable power the governor has claimed and is not observing the North Carolina Constitution.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Jake Johnson, and the next question is about workforce development. What programs and initiatives can be implemented at a state level to address workforce development and unemployment in our area?
Absolutely. Thank you, Graham. And I think a large part of what we do is investing in our community colleges and investing in apprenticeship programs, investing in trade schools, making sure that people know we do need a mix in the workforce, that not everyone has to go to a four-year college to succeed. There are very good trade jobs out there. And I think it falls upon us as elected officials to make sure students coming out of high school know exactly what their options are. And I'm sure we'll hear about it more and more tonight, but we have to make sure that we get rural broadband in our areas to a level that our kids are on the same playing field as any other school districts in the state. That will go a long way in making sure that whichever path they choose, they are the most well prepared, but making sure that they know those trade schools, apprenticeships are an option and a very viable one that they can lead to a very lucrative and good career right here in the area. So just promoting those in a way that as elected officials, that's what we should be doing.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Brian Caskey.
Thank you. One of the things we've heard a lot about is opportunity zones. I don't believe that opportunity zones work. I think they're a pretty nice little tax shelter for Wall Street investors. In Mills River, our focus has been on improving infrastructure as a way to attract businesses, both small and large. Amazon, for example, would never have come to Mills River if it wasn't for our commitment to roll out fiber optic internet to the entire town. All 22.5 square miles will be covered with fiber optic internet in the next 3 years. Bakeries, breweries, light industry, outdoor adventure companies, they all want to be in Mills River because we're investing in them the same way that we want those businesses to invest in us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Chuck Edwards.
Well, thank you. Workforce development is one of the absolute top concerns of almost every employer that I talk to. What we have done, what I have helped do since I have chaired the Senate and Commerce Committee in the General Assembly, we have created and funded a program, Future NC, which is a collaborative of businesses, colleges, community colleges, and other interested parties around the state to begin to explore what the next generation workforce development needs are and how we can meet those today. I have supported and fund career coaches in our community college system that teams high schools with community colleges and universities to show young people out there what the opportunities are for them, what they can earn, what the qualifications, educational qualifications would be. I have helped fully fund our community college system. I have helped fund the NC Promise system.
Thank you.
Where someone can get a college education for $500 a semester.
Next, we'll hear from Sam Edney.
Well, I'm living proof that you don't need a college education to be successful. I have a 2-year degree from Maybe Tech. I find it interesting that my opponent is all for expanding broadband, and we've talked about it for years. You guys have been there. Where is it? The big problem with workforce development right now is the assault that has occurred on our public schools in North Carolina over the last 10 years. We've driven teachers out of North Carolina. We've disrespected teachers in North Carolina. We are still below pre-recession levels with funding, regardless of what my opponent's going to tell you that they've raised teacher pay and raised school funding. We are still far below where we need to be. The number one place to start is funding public education and paying our teachers what they deserve.
Thank you. For our next question, we're going to begin with Brian Caskey, and this is a question that's about healthcare. The question is, how would you work to increase access to healthcare for low-income and underserved populations in our community? And do you support expanding Medicaid?
I absolutely support expanding Medicaid. I just want to tack on to that last question, though. One of the things I think that we should look at as legislators is making community college free in the state of North Carolina. The state of Tennessee does it, and they're very successful with that. Now back to your health insurance question. Expanding Medicaid would cost the state literally nothing. The federal government would pay for 90% of it. around 600,000 North Carolina citizens would be covered if we expanded Medicaid. And those are pre-pandemic numbers. So we can add probably another 250,000 people to that number and completely paid for by the federal government, with the exception of that 10% match, which would be made up by other working people. So I'm 100% for expanding Medicaid. It's one of my top priorities in the legislature, and I think we'll do it the first day of the new session. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Chuck Edwards.
Can you hear me now? Is that a yes? You can hear me now? Okay, I had a message from a moderator somewhere. You know, I have worked diligently in the North Carolina Senate to expand healthcare in North Carolina. I passed Senate Bill 86, the Small Business Healthcare Act, that would enable folks like North Carolina chambers to come together and behave like large employers and be able to offer more affordable health insurance to their employees. I have certainly supported and worked for EPOs, exclusive provider organizations, would offer another arsenal of insurance programs in North Carolina. I've worked to add transparency in billing for hospitals and medical centers. One of the things that frustrates North Carolina families the most is when they get a bill and they can't really understand what is included in that bill. Transparency would help lower cost itself. Don't support Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act for a plethora of reasons. A lot of those are human costs.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Sam Edney.
Well, before you get me to vote for something that's going to result in 1,000 of our brothers and sisters across North Carolina dying, I'm going to have to hear mighty good reasons. Folks, you're paying for healthcare in two ways. One, your tax dollars are going to other states to fund expansion of healthcare in those states instead of healthcare right here in North Carolina. These folks have had the opportunity for the last decade to expand Medicaid, and they've chosen not to. As a result of that, healthcare costs have risen in North Carolina. And your premiums, if you have insurance, have risen because we failed to expand Medicaid. We've already paid for it. You're paying for it twice with tax dollars that get sent elsewhere and with higher costs and higher premiums. It is a moral failure to refuse to expand Medicaid in North Carolina.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jake Johnson.
Thank you. I would vote no on the Medicaid expansion, and here's why. We already have voted on a system to put in place called Medicaid transformation. And what that transformation would look like is people who are underserved or need coverage, need any coverage, could apply to a very certain plans. There would actually be 5 different plans they could apply to. They could shop plans for the one that fits them best. And from our point of view as legislators, we would actually, for the first time, know what we're paying. Right now, we do not know what we are paying for Medicaid in this state. It is a huge number every year, but we really marginally do not know what we're paying on the breakdown. Under the Medicaid transformation, as opposed to expansion, we would know what we're paying for each individual. They could shop the plan that works best for them. And best of all, it would move to a managed care instead of a fee-for-service plan. So not only would we know what we're paying, they could actually get managed care as opposed to going and we don't know what we're paying, they have to go to the emergency room for routine services. Thank you.
Our next question, we're going to begin with Chuck Edwards, and the question is about the North Carolina DOT. Given NCDOT's significant budget challenges, how will you ensure that local projects like the Pisgah Forest intersection are not further delayed?
There's no way to ensure that projects are not going to be delayed. What we have done, what I helped to do, in this most recent session is to pass House Bill 77, which creates a level of accountability for DOT. We were able to get funding back underneath them, getting them back on their feet, just so that they could function and that they could begin working on projects again. They had miserably, the governor's administration had miserably managed the funding of DOT. They spent $743 million beyond their budget. And what we have done, again, is to get their feet up underneath them. We've revamped board of transportation so that there's a different level of accountability. We can ensure that there's a greater efficiency going forward than what we've seen.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Sam Edney.
Well, what he conveniently failed to mention was that we've had some devastating storms in North Carolina that pull money away from DOT and DOT projects. But if you listen to the report on DOT, it was clear that there were problems with management of the projects. And I can tell you that as an elected official in this county, we had a school bond program when I was on the school board. And I personally was involved in making sure that the taxpayers didn't pay for mistakes by our architect or by our contractors. And that's the kind of elected official you need to send to Raleigh to monitor how your money is spent, and one who will work hard to understand the problems, reach across the aisle to work with others to come up with a system. Maybe there were problems at DOT, but these guys have been there. Why didn't they get them fixed?
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jake Johnson.
I don't want to repeat too much of what anyone said, but I think it's key that we got those steps put into place where we had to see those levels of accountability come to fruition before we would fund the next level of a project. And you know, I will say I voted for the DOT relief when it came up, and I'll give the same reason now I gave when I voted to support it. If we totally stop funding these projects, it's not the people who made the mistakes in Raleigh that are going to get punished and lose their job. It's our local contractors right here at home. It's our local rock quarries. It's our local contractors that go out and do the work. They're the ones that are really suffering, not the ones who ran it over $700 million in the wrong direction and then gave themselves raises for doing it. Those, I'm afraid, are not the ones who would get punished. It's our local guys. That's why I voted for the bill that would put those fail-safes in place, but also make sure they could keep working and keep our local people employed.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Brian Caskey.
Well, DOT has certainly had their issues, and I interface with DOT as much as anybody here in Henderson County, Transylvania County, and Buncombe County, sitting on the French Broad River MPO and also the Henderson County TAC. I will say that there are multiple factors. We can't just blame it on Governor Cooper. We can't blame it on Governor McCrory. We can blame it on dysfunction in Raleigh, because we don't have people right now who are willing to work across the aisle. In Mills River, I serve with 4 Republicans. And when it comes time to sit down and solve problems, we drop our party affiliations and we work until things are solved to the satisfaction of the community of Mills River. And that's really the way it ought to work anywhere. In Raleigh or anywhere else, people ought to be more concerned about solving problems than dealing with party affiliations and whether they're on red team or blue team.
Thank you. Our next question, we're going to begin with Sam Edney, and this question is actually about partisanship. And the question that was submitted is, what can your party do to work better with the other side? So we'll begin with Sam Edney.
Well, the best example I can give you is that when I was on the school board, we had a Republican majority school board. The county commission was Democrat majority. And we worked together to get things done, to increase teacher supplements, to go through a multi-million-dollar school bond issue. And yes, there's going to be differences of opinion. But the way you solve differences of opinion is not by locking the other guys out, as just happened with the bill they passed last night or last week, the COVID bill, the final bill that they passed before they adjourned. Democrats had no say in the crafting of the bill, and they could make no amendments. That is not working across the aisle. So I'm ready and willing to work across the aisle. The question is the majority in Raleigh, the current majority, willing to work across the aisle? That's the real question.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Jake Johnson.
And I think that question was answered well. When we first got into this pandemic, we actually went out and the speaker appointed these bipartisan committees, actually had Democrat chairs on these committees. And we come out with some really, really good legislation around regulatory reform that would help businesses survive. We came out with funding packages. They worked, there was a handful of different ones. I sat on the economic recovery, but there was a healthcare one, there was an education one. And we came out and actually had some great unanimous bills passed in a bipartisan fashion. And it was great to see, it was great to work with. And, you know, even when I was on the county commission, I served with a Democrat on the county commission. He and I got along really well. Most of the time we got along really well, and I enjoyed his knowledge of the board. And so there are plenty of opportunities for us to work together. And if we look back at these committees we had that got into policy, and our primary goal was helping people and helping businesses and helping this state get back on track. And we passed some really good legislation out of it.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Brian Caskey.
Thank you. I think the best example I can use is that, you know, out here in Mills River, I'm the first Democrat who's ever been elected to the town council. And so I came onto the board and I was outnumbered 4-1, and they told me flat out, you're going to be outnumbered, you're going to be outvoted 4-1 every time. And when I announced that I was going to run for this race, one of my fellow town councilmen came to my kickoff and he said, hey, I'd like to say a few words. And he got up in front of everybody and he said, you know, we told Brian flat out he was going to be outvoted 4-1 every time. And we found out pretty quick he had some good ideas. And then we found out we were voting for him a lot of the time, and we were voting with him, and he had some good ideas for the community. And what eventually ended up happening is they ended up voting me in as mayor pro tem at our December organizational meeting. So that's a really good example of how Democrats and Republicans can work across the aisle. You have to drop that red hat, blue hat stuff and just get to work on problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Chuck Edwards.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. There are some issues where Democrats and Republicans are just not going to agree. I've been extremely proud in my tenure in the Senate to have been able to work across the aisle on a number of bills. The Senate Bill 86, the small business health care described to you a while ago, was a bipartisan effort. The budget bill, House Bill 966 last year, was a bipartisan effort. The COVID relief bills that we just passed were almost unanimous in every situation. When I was appointed the chair as the Joint Oversight Committee for Economic Development and Global Engagement, the first thing that I did, picked up the phone and called every single member, including the Democrats, and said, what is your vision for economic development in North Carolina? What is it that you would like to accomplish on this committee? And how can we work together to do that? I worked heavily on the Military Occupational Licensure Act, which was a bipartisan effort.
Thank you. Our next question, we're going to begin with Jake Johnson. And the question is about the budget. We've referenced it several times. What will you prioritize in the coming budget to address shortfalls in revenue?
Well, can you hear me? Well, I think we have to look at things that, you know, what are wants versus needs? What are the timelines for these projects? What are projects that we have to do in that 1 to 3 year frame versus that 3 to 5 year, maybe even 10-year frame? We were coming out of a very good economic situation. We had went and we were topping Forbes list of place to do business. Unemployment was way down. We had went from 10 years ago, a $2 billion shortfall, to actually running $1 billion revenue and having great reserves. And frankly, that's why we were in this COVID crisis in a lot better financial situation than a lot of states were, because we had made a lot of very good fiscally smart responsible decisions leading up to this. We're going to have to carry that same conservative mentality going forward. But if I could point to one, I think we've really pinpointed a need for broadband for education, but also people working from home, and maybe jobs that will stay working from home jobs in the future.
Next, we'll hear from Brian Caskey.
Thank you. You know what Jake and Chuck are ignoring is the fact that they have just shifted the tax burden from the rich to the poor. North Carolina was the only state in the nation to kill the earned income tax credit. That's a Reagan-era conservative idea that allows working people to keep more of the income that they've earned. Meanwhile, in this state, the corporate tax rate has been cut from 6.9% to 2.5%. More than 80% of that reduction went to corporations that are based out of state. In Mills River, on my motion, we cut the property tax rate. We paid off a loan on our town hall facility, which would save taxpayers over $754,000. And we established a fund balance policy for the first time in town history. Chuck Edwards and Jake Johnson have cut taxes on big corporations, but they've also raised the taxes on the bottom 40% of North Carolinians. So something is out of whack and we've got to change it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Chuck Edwards.
Well, thank you for that. I believe that the main priority is going to be to balance the budget without having to raise taxes on anyone in North Carolina. We've seen what the have done to businesses. We saw that back in 2009, 2010, 2011, when the state was effectively bankrupt. And the answer for the folks in Raleigh at that time was to raise taxes on the backs of working families and small businesses. It is true, we have lowered taxes in North Carolina. We've lowered taxes for individuals, for working families, particularly for the lower income folks. We've raised the standard deduction from $17,500 over $21,500. Do you have any idea what the top items are that would entice people to bring their businesses to North Carolina? Number 6 on the list is corporate income tax rates.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we'll hear from Sam Edney.
And on that same list, in the top perennially, in the top 5, is a good, sound education system that produces a workforce that is capable of meeting the needs of the businesses that look to invest in that state. Taxes is way down the list. And economic development is the outcome, but there's a lot of work ahead of that before you see the jobs come. And one is infrastructure. Jake again mentioned high-speed internet. Yes, that's a great idea. We've been talking about it for years. You guys have been there. Where is the internet? So we need to, the other thing, the question originally was about taxes. And the truth is, what I've seen is taxes on car repairs, taxes on utility bills. That came under Republican majority in Raleigh. They transferred the tax burden from the wealthiest among us and corporations.
Our next question.
Working people in this.
Our next question will be actually to Brian Caskey, and it is about infrastructure. And the specific question is, what should be done at the state level to bring high-speed internet to Transylvania County and other rural areas of the state?
Well, one of the things we can do is get behind Joe Sam Queen in the State House. He's got legislation ready to go that would address this issue. But we need to view broadband internet the same way that we viewed rural electrification in the 1930s. It is at this point a human right. If you are a parent at home and you are trying to accomplish an online degree, you need high-speed internet. If you are a student at home trying to do your homework, you need high-speed internet. I have heard of children in Transylvania County who have to walk or be driven 3 miles to the nearest internet hotspot. And so we need to focus on that. That is the one thing that's going to hold us back in North Carolina from competing with these other states around us as we enter and proceed deeper into the 21st century. It is absolutely essential.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Chuck Edwards.
Yeah, well, thank you. The current pandemic has certainly put the spotlight on the need for better internet access in North Carolina. But just talking about the need, I want you to listen to some of the things that I have helped accomplish in the time that I've been in the 2018. I helped pass a budget that added 10 million, that created great program, the Growing Rural Economies with Access to Technology program. We funded that in 2018 to the tune of $10 million, 2019 to $30 million. In our first COVID relief bill, we added $9 million. In our third COVID relief bill, we added $30 million for a total of $79 million spent to expand broadband in the last 3 years. In 2019, I co-sponsored and passed Senate Bill 310, the Electric Co-op Rural Broadband Services Act, which would allow electric co-ops to put fiber on their poles. And then the next is to consider a regulatory entity such as the North Carolina Utilities Commission.
Next, we'll hear from Sam Edney.
Well, $79 million is a drop in the bucket. Yancey County is going to have 100% high-speed internet access. And for a county half the size of Transylvania County, they're going to spend $25 million in that one county. There's 100 counties in North Carolina. Not all of them are rural, but it's going to take way more than the kind of money that Chuck has talked about. I think we are facing some real difficult times ahead because of the devastation of COVID-19. The first thing we need to do is defeat COVID-19, and then we need to rebuild our economy. It's time for a big bond program to invest in infrastructure across the state. The state has capacity, money is cheap, and we should be investing in ourselves, investing in internet, rebuilding our schools, which are on average 70 years old, and get that money circulating in the economy. It will circulate 6 or 7 times and jumpstart.
Next, we're gonna hear from Jake Johnson.
I'll say a couple of things. I think we took a good step in Polk County when I was on the board there. We put out a survey to the community and said, rank your service. What is the speed? Sometimes that didn't always match up with what the company said the speed was, but we wanted to hear from the people. From that, we overlaid it with our GIS and said, okay, this is where the survey overlays with the GIS. Let's look at our areas that are in the most desperate need. We have to start somewhere. And I agree, it's a huge number. We need to meet that. And every time it comes up, we allocate as much money as we can, given what we've got. But I think that we need better systems in place of knowing where that next mile needs to go, and sitting down with these companies and going, does this make sense for you? If not, we need to find somebody who this makes sense for and that can do it. Because I really don't like it when companies come into an area and go, well, we can't make money there for 10 more years or something, but we don't want anybody else making money there. We need to find people who are willing to take on these projects and expand that next mile and show us a business plan that makes sense with the money we're giving down.
Our next question, we're going to start with Chuck Edwards, and our question is about natural resources. What policies can be implemented to protect our natural resources, which make up 50% of land in Transylvania County?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Well, thanks for that question. What we can do is to continue the work that I have done since I've been in the General Assembly. I've expanded the budget for the Clean Water Management Trust Fund. I've expanded the budget in chairing the appropriations for economic Parks and Recreation Trust Fund, for the Farm Preservation Trust Fund. I've helped create, in fact, I created a state park right here in Western North Carolina, the Pisgah View State Park. I have brought money to Western North Carolina for recreational testing of water. I created a reserve of $200,000 to address or mitigate underground petroleum leaks when they can't be determined that those leaks are coming from storage tanks. There's a lot that can be done in North Carolina, and I am proud of my environmental record. to work on those things.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Sam Edney.
Well, would you repeat the question, please?
Sure. I'll quickly repeat. It's about natural resources. What policies can be implemented to protect our natural resources, which make up 50% of the land in Transylvania County?
Well, the first thing I want to point out is that our natural resources in Transylvania County are being overused. And so they need more money so that they can prepare for the crowds that are showing up, for instance, in DuPont State Park. That place is just getting worn out. Second thing is we need to fully fund our Department of Environmental Quality at a time when they needed more money and more assets to work on things like Gen X in the Cape Fear River, the coal ash spill on the Dan River. Budgets were cut not only for the Department of Environmental Quality, but also for the Attorney General's office, so that he couldn't pursue these polluters who were responsible for that damage. The second thing I would say is that in Transylvania County, we are heavily dependent on tourism here, and the lack of help for restaurants and other industries that surround that tourism.
Next,
recent bill
we'll
hurt
hear.
those companies.
Was that me next, Graham?
It is. Yes, please.
Well, I will say a lot of the things, I don't want to repeat Chuck too much, but I've enjoyed working with both Chucks, Senator Chuck Edwards and Representative Chuck McGrady on this, who's been a huge champion for our state parks for many years. And I've really learned a lot from him in the year that I've been there, learning about these trust funds, how they're funded, how they act. When I was on the county commission prior to this for 3 years, we had a large project with Conserving Carolinas that I really enjoyed working with them on through our rec department. A lot of times as a government entity, we have to work with these private entities and nonprofit industries to leverage funds, help them get grant money, make sure the money there make sure the money is there for these projects. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it's a huge draw for our region, a huge economic development aspect of our region, and we need to make sure it's taken care of.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Brian Caskey.
Thank you. As you mentioned in my intro, my undergraduate degree is in biology, so the environment is something that's very important to me. I am shocked, absolutely stunned to hear my opponent talking about his environmental record as though it's a good thing. There are plenty of organizations out there that will score a legislator on what their environmental score is. And one of those is votesmart.org. Up to this election cycle, Chuck Edwards had an environmental score of 0. One of the reasons for that is because of Duke Energy. Duke Energy gives Chuck a lot of PAC money, and he votes their way on the Senate floor. And one of the best things we can do to protect the environment is to stop allowing these corporate polluters to have so much power over our legislators, because all they do is they pay for that influence and then they use it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This will be our last question before our closing, and we're going to begin with Sam Edney. And the question is about education. We have exceptional schools in Western North Carolina. What steps would you take to support schools and teachers in the future?
Well, you're absolutely right, Graham. We do have exceptional schools. Polk County, I believe, is #1 in the state public school system. And my opponent mentioned his work on internet access down there. 40% of the students in Polk County still don't have access to the internet. That from the superintendent of schools in Polk County to the Kiwanis Club. The next thing is we need to elect representatives and senators who actually believe in public education. We need to invest in public education. Our teachers met the moment of this COVID-19 crisis. The politicians in Raleigh need to meet the moment, and they have not. Going forward, investments in education transformed North Carolina from an agricultural, tobacco, and textile-dependent economy to a beacon in the South.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jake Johnson.
Thank you. In the budget that had been passed by the House and Senate, there was actually 4.5% pay raises in there for teachers. There was raises in there for non-instructional staff. There was a ton of money in there for infrastructure projects. And unfortunately, I don't know if it's because it didn't have Medicaid expansion in it or what the deal was with the governor's office. It was not signed into law. So I agree. We wish we could have got that done. We wish there could have been raises. And frankly, I've talked to a lot of teachers across the district who say, thank you so much. We would have loved to have had that 4.5%. What happened? And we have to tell them, say it was vetoed, and that's why. The last time pay was frozen was 10 years ago under a Democrat-controlled legislature. It was not a Republican-controlled legislature. There's been raises every year. And I will say, I was very proud of Polk County ranked #1 for school system. We were very proud of that. Very proud to work with our superintendent, who was the principal when I was there. And we still work closely together today, along with the other superintendents. So we look forward to continuing that relationship.
Next, we'll hear from Brian Caskey.
Thank you. I think the very first thing we have to do is we have to treat our teachers like the professionals that they are. And currently the legislature does not do that. One number that I'd like you to keep in mind is that in 2007, a rookie teacher, when adjusted for inflation, a rookie teacher earned $36,598. And that's in today's money. A rookie teacher now earns $35,000 per year. So we can talk all the hoodoo and the fuzzy math you want about teacher raises and this and that. The fact is that public schools and the public school system is being defunded, and we need to reverse that. I'm a product of the public school system. I believe firmly in the public school system. This very morning, I was endorsed by the NCAE, and I'm very proud of that recommendation. We need increased teacher pay. We need to increase per pupil spending. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Chuck Edwards.
Yeah, well, thank you for that too. I also am a product of public education, and I believe very strongly in supporting the public schools in North Carolina. Too many folks out there want to keep score by how much money we can spend. And if you want to use that scoreboard for just a minute, I can tell you that I have supported the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th consecutive pay raises in North Carolina for our teachers. Unfortunately, those raises got caught up in politics from the governor's office in the last budget. I have supported a total increase in education spending. Do you realize in the last North Carolina's spending is up 33%. So those are a few facts if you want to keep score like that. But more than anything, we've got to get the bureaucracy out of our schools and allow our teachers to do what they do best, such as me supporting the Testing Reduction Act that I did this past year.
Thank you. Thank you. Our last portion of this is really just final closing comments, and we're going to begin with Jake Johnson.
Thank you so much, Graham, and thank you to the Chamber for hosting this. This has been a great event. If you send me back to Raleigh, I'll continue to vote for conservative policies, pro-life policies, protecting the born and the unborn. I'll continue supporting Second Amendment policies because it's a constitutional right that I think is protected in our Constitution. I'll continue supporting pro-business policies because I believe this economy is driven by the worker and the entrepreneur and not government. I'll continue supporting pro-veteran policies, and I will keep supporting them until North Carolina is considered the most friendly state for veterans in the nation. We owe it all to them, and they deserve the best treatment. And finally, we have got to support law and order policies. What I've seen in the streets of Raleigh, Charlotte, and other places around, even as close as Asheville, what I've seen, it's absurd. We have got to bring back some law and order. We've got to have elected officials in executive positions who will make those tough calls and bring law and order to our streets so that people and businesses remain safe. Thank you so much, and I'd ask for your vote in November.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Brian Caskey.
Thank you. The North Carolina Council of Churches earlier this year asked Chuck Edwards and the leadership in Raleigh to focus on 4 things: Medicaid expansion, public school funding, broadband access, in criminal justice reform. It was an absolutely devastating indictment, an outright rejection of Chuck Edwards' policies in the Senate. We have the chance this fall to send a message that will echo down through North Carolina's history, a message that states that we love our neighbors as we love ourselves. We will reject corruption. We will embrace a new South, one where we invest in education and good jobs and healthcare and expanding broadband internet to all. I've already done so many of these things in Mills River. Chuck Edwards has been making empty promises for too long, and I say enough. Thank you to the Chamber. I appreciate being invited to this event.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Chuck Edwards.
Thank you. Thank you for that. My name is Chuck Edwards, and I am running for North Carolina Senate. Working families and small business first in North Carolina. My service to the community and working with fine business folks as you are, the Brevard Chamber, is just simply an extension of my service in Raleigh. I am proud to have worked alongside you as a businessman. I am proud to have represented you in Raleigh for the last years. If you do me the honor of sending me back, I'm going to make families and small businesses the top priority. And that means building our economy, reducing regulation, reducing taxes, holding government spending accountable, and keeping our communities safe. My name's Chuck Edwards. I'm running for North Carolina Senate.
Thank you. Our final closing will be Sam Edney.
Well, I want to thank the Chamber again for holding this event, but most of all, I want to thank the folks in the audience. You deserve to hear from candidates so you can make good choices. You're here to choose between us, but the real choice is between what you've lived under with the current majority and something better. Think about your own life. Rising healthcare costs, sales taxes on car repairs and power bills, schools that don't have enough money, and the steady drumbeat of corruption coming from Raleigh. Anyone can learn talking points. So what's the difference between a talker and a leader? A leader relies on values and life experience, can look beyond himself and see the bigger community. A leader has the confidence to care for others, the courage to stand up and speak out, the maturity to work with differences. A leader can see what's needed and has the experience to turn that vision into reality. You're here to make a choice. I hope you take it seriously because I take this job seriously. Thank you.
I am grateful to all of the candidates. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your insight. And I thank all the audience, and I thank the Chamber of Commerce for putting this on, all their planning. So it's been an honor to be with you this evening.
Thank you for joining us for this session, and thank you everyone out there for joining us this evening. To highlight some quick thank you reminders, thank you to Transylvania County Government for loaning us the facilities, Mike McKinney for doing the audio visual for us this evening, Willow Walker for all of her efforts, the WSQL Radio, Comporium, and the Transylvania Times for their coverage during and before and after this event. Please go to brevardnchamber.org to find out more about where you can view the entire thing or your favorite parts following this event. Thank you, everyone. And my last message is this: please vote. It is your duty and your right as a citizen in this incredible community, in this incredible country. Please make a difference by voting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.